that cream?
No, it's just milk.
Oh, no. Well, in Kansas, that's cream. Okay, so let's take... Well, I'm going to...
That's okay.
Okay, so... Hi. I can already tell by looking at the sound quality that my voice is still carrying very loud. Go ahead and introduce yourself.
Well, my name is P. Segal, and I'll talk a lot about a lot of things.
Awesome. You're in the right podcast then. Okay. I can tell by the wavelengths you're fine. So as long as we just keep it at a normal... just if you whisper, make it sure it's just a dramatic moment of whispering. It'll still pick it up. This is a pretty good condenser. Okay, so I'm just going to let it run, and then how I start the show usually is just tell me if you're game. I hope you are. I like to sing the intro to the show with the person who's on the show that day. So the jingle for this podcast, I hate the word podcast. Let's just call it a radio show, because that's really what it is. It's a radio show without a station.
Does this actually get put on your website?
It's going to go public, yeah. You are the third person I've officially recorded, and I am waiting till I have 7 of them so that I can publish over a weekly basis and still have a sponge time to have other people on. So, and so far everyone's Bay Area. So the example here the jingle for the show is Time Waster Radio. Radio for those who refuse to listen. And so you can either just talk it or sing it along, however you feel. I know you have a thing with singing, though.
I'm not a good singer.
Do you want to try it? You just want to try it? You can just follow me.
Yes.
You can just be my backup vocal.
Okay.
All right. Let's do this before I start smoking cigarettes, too. Sorry, Mom. All right. Let's try it. We'll get to a zen point here. Time Waster Radio. Radio for those who refuse to listen. Okay. All right. Here, I'm in San Francisco. I'm in my old neighborhood, and I'm with...
P. Segal.
Okay. Otherwise known as... Miss P?
Miss P.
Okay. Anything else that I don't know about?
Roberta Agatha Gaetana Pizzamenti.
Okay. Do you have things published under that name?
No.
Oh, okay.
Everything's published under P. Segal, and that's why I try never to acknowledge my actual name.
Yeah. Well, that's the Bay Area, too. Right? Not acknowledging your real name? Or I feel like there's a root to that here. There's when I moved here, a lot of people were changing their names, or... I don't know.
Well, actually, it happened.
Yeah, okay.
It's not something that I intentionally did.
Okay.
When I went away to college, I knew a lot of people who had the same first name, which was very strange.
Okay.
And so for convenience, so that, we'd know who we were addressing, we called each other by the first initials of our last names. And my last name was Pizzamenti, and so they called me P. And then a few years later, I met the guy that I married, Alex Segal, and he called me P from day one. So I became P. Segal, not by choice, but just by accident.
I am learning something new, or I got really high the last time you told me that story and I forgot. Because I thought you chose P for Proust.
No.
Is this a common misnomer?
Yes.
Okay, so Miss P used to run Proust. No, the restaurant was...
Café Proust.
Café Proust, I'm sorry. It only existed... For me, when I moved in the neighborhood, I think you were just about to close. It was
1999 to 2002.
Yes. So I was just about to move in. Actually, it had just closed right when I moved into the old building. All right, we'll get around to all that stuff. But And that cafe was just a few blocks away from where we're sitting right now.
Yes, 2 blocks away.
That's McAllister and Baker?
Yes.
Okay. Which is now a fancy, bougie New Mexican burrito place, which is the better option because it had been another bad cafe for a while.
Yes.
Yeah. They were sweet. Those guys were sweet, but it was a terrible cafe.
Yes.
This neighborhood has changed.
Yes, it has. Yes, it has.
For the better?
It depends on what you consider better.
Okay.
When I moved in here into this neighborhood in 1984,
yeah,
it was the inner city.
Okay.
Almost everybody was black.
This was a working class black, like city union neighborhood, right?
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Pretty much. And many of the homeowners bought houses here on the GI Bill after World War II.
Okay.
And had lived here, for 50 years and raised their kids here by the time I moved in. And it was a wonderfully friendly neighborhood. I knew all my neighbors. They all said hello and good morning and how are you? And every 4th of July, our block, I don't know if they were still doing this when you moved into
No, they did. But a future villain who will come into the story helped to dismantle that. Our former landlord.
Yes.
Yeah, no, we had that happened for maybe the first 6 years I was there. 6 or 7. Yeah.
Well, as the people who had lived here all those years started selling their homes when they were suddenly worth a lot of money, the festivities on the block got much less elaborate.
And definitely wider. I watched it get wider just over 5 years, I swear to God. It was bizarre the first couple of years. I mean, by the way, I did just pass on the way here walking from the inner Richmond. I told you this the other night when I came over for a party, and we'll get to the parties later. But I passed someone actually on this trip that I hadn't seen. I was really happy to see him. He's an older black guy. He's really short, super sweet, always has a ball cap on, and always going to that corner store close to... He's always like in a hurry, and he's super nice. And I actually almost screamed, "Hey!" I didn't want to freak him out because the rest of the neighborhood has changed.
Has changed so much. On New Year's Eve at midnight, you'd hear hundreds of guns being shot off into the air.
That sounds like my hometown.
Yeah,
it really does.
But shortly after we moved into 1907. Someone actually got shot on the street right in front of the house on the Baker Street side.
So we're talking about 1907 Golden Gate, which also is an infamous place, and we'll get around to that as well. Okay, so someone got shot out front on New Year's?
No, this was just, in the middle of the afternoon.
Yeah, of course.
Random day. But there was a lot of gang activity in the neighborhood then.
Yeah.
However, I mean, one of the gang members who went up and down the streets of the neighborhood on his bicycle selling pot. Yeah. He
sweetheart.
Yes, and he carried my groceries home every time he saw me carrying groceries home from Folletti's.
And he didn't need a nugget of weed either because he was already got rock and roll. Yeah, no, I still think there's a fight for a neighborhood vibe here, but it's definitely being strangled for sure.
Yes, and so many of the people who live in the neighborhood now never take their eyes off their devices. Yeah. They don't even know who their neighbors are, and they don't want to know.
I think that's just a common thing throughout the world right now, but it is amazing in San Francisco to watch. I think in New York, watching people walk around with their devices, I got used to that. There's something about San Francisco because there's so much beauty, nature, interesting things to look at, art in people's windows, political signs, characters on the street. I'm fascinated that people... Yeah, it is interesting when people like literally live on their device. And the thing that I think is interesting, and that goes to what you just said with them doing it in this particular neighborhood. When I first got here, which was like early 2003... or late 2002, 2000. Anyways, No, there were people were getting pistol whipped, like getting into their cars and stuff. And like the thing too is that is scary on a certain level, but it was a lot of hyperbole, like with people getting super obsessed with like, oh, that. And the thing, it's a dangerous neighborhood. And when we got here, I was like, thank God, I needed that buffer, one, because I was inviting people to come from, I was new to the city, and I didn't understand how truly white and upper echelon, financially available. It took me many years to realize the disparate class in this city. For me, it was about race. When I first got here, Kansas City was far blacker, and so coming here in this neighborhood, I did feel a bit more comfortable. But I was a little weirded out when people wouldn't visit me. And I mean, people would literally say, oh, can you, like, meet me? I mean, I think even the Lower Haight was a bit sketchy for some people at that point, which is hilarious now. Because some of the punk clubs are still open down there. Like all the gutter punk clubs, and a bit of, like, the nightlife, the faux Berlin techno. There was a bit of that. I don't know. You know more than I do. But I couldn't believe when people were like... I mean, the city is so small. When someone would say anywhere, they're like, I'm not going to go there. It was like, are you fucking kidding me?
Yeah.
And now everyone wants to live in this neighborhood.
People live too much in fear.
Yeah, 100%.
Mm-hmm.
Hashtag that's how Trump got elected.
Right.
Sorry, I didn't mean to mention their name. So I'm tangential.
That's fine.
You feel free to rein it in. I'm going to smoke a cigarette while you talk about something.
Okay.
What topics do you want to cover on this?
Well, let's see. I would like to actually say a little bit more about this neighborhood.
Oh, perfect. I'll borrow the lighter. Thank you.
Yes. Because it was so much a part of the really golden age of San Francisco.
When did you move here?
I was born and raised here.
In this neighborhood?
No. Well, I was born 9 blocks away from here.
From here? Oh, at that hospital?
Yes.
Which is what?
St. Mary's.
St. Mary's, okay.
But I spent most of my early life in North Beach.
Okay.
And then my parents moved out to the Avenues when I went to Lowell High School.
What? So Avenues, when you say Avenues, this is a controversy I just had to deal with. Okay, what do you mean by the Avenues?
Typically when a native says the Avenues, they mean the Sunset.
Okay.
Even though the Avenues run straight through the park and into the Richmond.
So I just lost a bet. Go on. I know you're listening, Michelle. Go on.
Yeah. Yes, I lived in the Sunset and went to high school out there.
Why would the Richmond not be called the Avenues, even though those are the same streets, even crossing the park, and they're also avenues? Inquiring minds want to know.
Yes, that's a good question.
Who should I ask? Who do you think I can answer that one?
Peter Hartlub at the Chronicle.
Okay. Done. Okay, tell me more about this neighborhood.
So, in the 1940s, there was still pretty serious segregation in San Francisco. And the development of the American jazz movement was at its peak.
Mm-hmm. The West Coast tour was here. This was the heart of jazz on the West.
Absolutely. It was called the Harlem of the West. And because a lot of the absolute greatest household name jazz musicians couldn't play at the downtown hotels and
for various reasons.
Holes, simply because they were not white.
Yep. America.
They played at the small clubs on Fillmore Street.
Yeah.
Like the Black Hawk and, all these historic jazz clubs.
Most of which are all gone now, right?
Yes.
They're all gone.
Just about. And also on Divisadero, the Waizima.
Oh, yeah. The Ethiopian restaurant.
Yes, was a famous place for jazz performers to play. And, so people like Billie Holiday played in these little tiny clubs on Divisadero Street. Mm. And because this was the inner city, it was entirely a black neighborhood in those days. The jazz musicians bought property here.
Yeah.
And, for example, John Handy owned the house across the street from Cafe Proust.
Okay.
And every jazz great in American history stayed at that house.
Yeah. That corner has a really good energy. Mm-hmm. Also, there was a death there right before I left, but yes.
Who's that?
This hustler kid murdered actually a friend of mine who lived in the Castro, and then like somehow it all ended in a station wagon at that corner right in front of McBaker corner store.
Wow.
Yeah. Anyways, but yeah, no, there's something. Yeah, I always love the energy of the. I'm sorry, I don't say energy very much. I've repeated it twice.
It's okay.
Okay, thank you. So a lot of so you were soaking in a lot of that.
Yeah, and of course, the whole city when I was growing up here was just, a treasure trove of artistic greats in just about every field.
Yeah.
Like on Russian Hill, Diebenkorn and Manuel Neri were teaching at the Art Institute and working in studios on the Hill. And the Beat Poets were all still living in North Beach.
Ferlinghetti's still around.
Ferlinghetti's still around. And almost all of them were from New York, but they spent a lot of their time here because their publisher was here.
Yeah.
And it was cheap.
Back when it was cheap.
Yes. And then, of course, in the Haight-Ashbury, there were the Grateful Dead and the Jefferson Airplane and all these bands that...
And the Stones, right? The Stones were there for a little bit.
Once again, everybody in the rock music world...
Popped in at some point.
Came here.
Yeah.
Because it was such a vital place. And
I think it still is. Yeah.
It still is, but the Arts Commission report last year said that 70% of the artists of San Francisco have either been evicted.
Mm-hmm. I don't know what you're talking about.
No, I'm sure you don't. And the remaining 30% are struggling to hang on to their places and, live with the anxiety of displacement all the time. I mean, it's not the same city it was. And when people say, why is, the city isn't the same, it's because the artists are gone.
Yeah.
To the extent that they once flourished here and just made our lives so interesting and colorful.
I like to say the temperature of the city has changed, both physically or literally, figuratively, and you toss in the other one, I don't know. But the city is still beautiful. This is still one of the most beautiful cities on the entire planet.
Yes, absolutely.
And it's just mind-boggling. And but yeah, you can't afford it. It's also interesting when I first moved here, realizing that people. One of the things that struck me coming from Kansas is realizing, or just on a concrete general population level, people not. Like, just going to Land's End or going out, like, that seemed like a journey for people. They were just like, oh my God, I'd never make it out there. It's so far. This is the tiniest city on the planet, too.
Yeah, it's true.
You can walk you and I are walkers. You and I have walked this city.
Yes. But then also, I mean, at this point in the city's history, It is now so expensive. I mean, it is the most expensive city in the richest country in the history of the world.
Yeah.
And if you work in the arts, especially if you're a writer,
where there's no money.
Where there's no money at all, and 200,000 journalists got, relieved of their jobs in the last year.
Yeah, there was a huge underground underground, above ground commercial.
Yeah, and so many, you still see the banks of boxes on the street corners where there used to be, like a dozen weekly publications.
Oh yeah.
That came out and
now it's like one with like empty boxes stacked next to each other.
Right.
Rotting, rusting.
China Times.
Is that the Bay Area Times is hanging on?
There is still, let's see. Well, the Bay Guardian is gone. The SF Weekly still in business.
Yeah, but they're just they have that's that same company that has one in Kansas. They have one in every metropolitan city. Yeah, and then they like staple articles together.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, the local journalists are going, and that's an important part of the art scene as well. Like people being written about. Yeah.
And so for people like me, while you're writing a novel or you're writing memoirs or something, you picked up a bunch of money, writing a piece for your local papers.
Back when they used to pay for journalism.
Yes, when they used to pay.
Yeah.
But now it's just so expensive to, keep publishing.
Yeah.
Because paper is one of the things that he who shall not be named put a tariff on, apparently.
Do what?
Yeah.
Wait, what?
Paper is now more expensive.
Oh, for sure. Well, my company's always been called Paper Oyster Press.
Yes. I have some of your fabulous cards.
Oh, you're sweet. Some of my art's in here, along with a bunch of other amazing arts. I need whiskey if I'm slurring already. I should get back to that. I'm sorry, I'm detracting you. So the neighborhood, at one point you had musicians, you had writers. This is all leading up to the burgeoning golden age of, what would you even say, like the 80s in a certain way? The 70s and 80s? Post the Beats. I mean, the Beats get the credit, but there is a part of this town that when I got here, that's what I saw. Those were the people, including yourself, people I was witnessing. I would argue we're already starting to claw in to hold on, because that was right after the first bubble.
Yes.
Post the 1989 earthquake, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
I watched that on TV, by the way.
Did you?
I was repressed homosexual into baseball cards, so at that point... That's true. I'm going there.
It was a good choice for you, Peter.
Yeah.
We adored having you here.
Well, you say that all the time. It's super sweet.
Yeah.
But the city has to survive. I mean, it's got to survive without a lot of people. Like you said, 70% is gone. Mm-hmm. And I was a newbie. That's the weird part, is realizing that I was new and now I'm not, and it's over. It's weird.
Now you're a part of the art history of San Francisco.
The fabric.
Yeah.
Well, the kids have to pick it up.
Yes, and, one of the things that we see is that we have this enormous entity in this town, an art school that basically doesn't teach art. They teach commercial art, fashion design, computer.
We're talking about CCA, we're talking about SFAI, we're talking about Art Academy, we're talking about...
The Art Academy of Art, yeah.
I noticed they changed the color of their bus. They were solid black for a while.
Yeah.
I was giving this a little bit of thought the other day while walking by. Their buses are now stark white. Yeah. I thought it was a little problematic, actually. I was like, I didn't like the black bus because it became such a symbol of the commercialization of the arts here.
Yeah.
But painting them white was even more of a I mean, I hate to use gentrification.
Now they look like the Google buses.
I know. Are the Google buses big and white, too?
I don't know. Some of those buses are big and white.
There's so many of those fucking buses.
Yeah, the other day I was waiting for the 24 Divisadero. Uh-huh. And 14 of those tech buses went by while I was waiting for one Muni bus. 14.
I thought they were trying to curb that. Is that just in theory? Because they stop at the regular bus stop, don't they? Often, or do they re-sanction those zones? Because that was a big deal, especially in the Mission. Those buses were stopping and taking up the public space, and then the other buses were getting delayed. Mm-hmm.
I mean, in one sense, you have to, you have to say, well, it's a public space, so anybody can use it.
Yeah.
But they make it possible for people who who work in Silicon Valley to easily come back and forth to town.
Yeah.
And live here.
Because if I'm going to live here, it needs to be easy. It's got to be easier. Somehow I've misplaced my flask. Don't you worry, I'll find it. Yeah. Do you still have, like, with concern to the buses? Because that seemed to be I didn't get evicted. I got bullied out. Because he was attempting to evict me, but I did take a settlement, mostly because I didn't want him to ever have another dime of my money. I'm serious. That was the breaking point. I was like, I never want to interact with this person ever again.
Yes.
And I think they count on that too. That's an underwritten part of, I think it's a part of the story when people, like, it's kind of well known it's international. When I'm in Europe, people are like, oh, you're one of the people who got. And I say bullied out because it's a class thing too. Like when you have paperwork served to you and you don't really understand how the courts work and how much money is involved, even if you have a free lawyer, even if everything's going on. Mm-hmm. There's yes. Mm-hmm. We understand. We went together through a similar situation in the same building with the same landlord, whose name shall not be spoken, similar to the administration of which we bow down to. What do you...
Well, here's an interesting story, actually, about that building.
Yeah, please.
Last year...
Okay. How long have you been out of the building?
I got evicted in 2004.
Was it 2004?
Yes.
That's a year after we moved... It was that fast? I feel like you were there for at least 2 years while I was...
Yeah, well, I think you moved in 2002.
And Toshi sold the building. Mm-hmm. And then our lives got turned upside fucking down.
Yeah.
Okay, go
on. I got an email from this woman who said, my friends and I just moved into this place, and it was so interesting that we looked it up online to see if there was any information about it.
Yeah.
And we found an article that you wrote about 1907 Golden Gate.
Me?
Me.
Oh, you did. Oh, okay, good. I was like, I didn't Yelp, I'm pretty sure.
And we just wanted to, make sure that, you're the same person.
Yeah.
So I said, yes, that is me.
Okay.
And she invited me over to my old apartment.
Oh, really?
Yes. They invited me to dinner.
Wait, so they were then renting?
1907.
Whoa.
Yeah.
So those frat boys are out. Because I had the frat boy nightmare after you left.
Yes, the frat boys are out.
Okay.
And these were 9 kids who all moved here from, I forget what state, but they were all friends. Uh-huh. They all got jobs in tech. And they all moved out here together and rented 1907.
Okay.
So I got to see the place.
Whoa, that must have been heartbreaking.
But, it was really hard. I stood outside before I went in for about 10 minutes just looking at the building and wondering how I would feel.
Yeah.
To go back into this place where so many things happened, mm-hmm. and like the early days of Burning Man and the Cacophony Society and all those, mm-hmm. Fantastic, wonderful adventures in my life.
It's kind of deceiving too because the one thing he hasn't changed besides the paint on the exterior is the doors entering.
Right.
So it does look. That's the heartbreaking part for me every time I go up too, because I'm like, I know behind this door it doesn't look anything like what used to be.
No.
Okay, so you stood 10 minutes before you rang the bell?
Yes.
Yeah, I can understand.
Just,
okay.
Wondering how I was going to feel.
Mm-hmm. They invited you over for dinner or cocktails?
They invited me for dinner.
That's sweet.
Yeah, it was very sweet. And so, I climbed the 44 stairs into the apartment and I looked around and I realized it was no longer the same place I lived.
Mm-hmm.
Because they made so many changes that took all the character out of the space.
Did they paint over the wood?
Yes.
Of course you did. White?
White.
Yeah, of course.
Of course.
Yeah.
And even in that redwood back parlor that was all wood.
Yeah. He painted that white?
He just painted some of the walls white, which was ridiculous. I mean, it certainly didn't make it any more beautiful. It made it, it was like unartistic. What can I say?
For lack of a better word, IKEA-esque. I mean, it's just, it's mall. It was like an air shot. Yeah.
And the owner of the building, when I moved in, had lived in that flat for 10 years and spent the 10 years taking every layer of lead-based paint off that redwood back parlor.
Nice. Do you have pictures? Do you have pictures? I mean, besides parties, we didn't think when we were living there to like document it. Yeah, I understand.
I do have some pictures, but not many.
Yeah.
I think there are probably a million pictures of the place.
Yeah.
In other people's photo collections.
I definitely had some, but they burned up in the fire that just destroyed my life.
No.
I had a bunch of Polaroids. Ashley and I had a whole Polaroid phase when we lived there. So we took tons of Polaroids of like definitely the last few parties you threw at the house. We were taking photos all the time.
Those parties.
Yeah, the parties. So you went up and just how did that go?
Well, the minute I turned into the main hallway going from the front of the house towards the back parlor, Ryan had taken out...
Oh, we weren't going to say his name.
Oh.
Well, it's okay. We'll just bleep it out.
Yes.
He needs no credit or press.
He took that hallway that diverted and at the room of doors.
Yeah.
For anyone who has never been there, which is, almost everybody who will be listening to this.
Yeah. Yeah, we should describe it.
The apartment was very big. It was 14 rooms, 4,100 square feet.
4,100 square feet. The top floor of... It wasn't Victorian, was it? No, it was...
It was Edwardian.
Edwardian. Mm-hmm. Peter. See what happens when you leave for a while?
So there was this very long hallway that went from one end of the apartment to the other, and it was broken up in the middle with a little room that had 7 doors that went into a closet, a bathroom, a toilet room, one bedroom, the hallway, and both hallways actually. And we used to delight in taking visitors into the room of doors and from the front entrance and spinning them around a few times and letting them choose a door.
Is that the room that had the secret stairwell too? No. Yeah?
Yes, the secret stairwell was off the room on the right as you came down.
Okay.
And then the hallway after the room of doors was slightly off kilter, so you didn't have one view down, 100 feet of hallway. But that's exactly what they did. They made it one long hallway and took out the room of doors.
Well, it's got to be functional. That's the difference.
They also took the bathroom off the kitchen.
Oh, wow.
And the only moment of sadness that I felt while I was there was when I walked into the renovated kitchen, which they did a wonderful job, I have to say.
Okay.
They did a wonderful job of...
Well, they were pretending to live there for a while, so I'm sure his wife had a little bit of statement in that.
Yes, I'm sure she did. Because we cooked, 1,000 magnificent,
meals.
detailed dinners out of that kitchen that had, a tiny, almost no counter space.
I'm actually we were in that kitchen a lot. It's been, now that you said 2004, I'm like, it was a while. Because I didn't leave until 2000. We started fighting in the fall of 2013, and it took a year for him. I think I moved out in the early summer of 2014. No, 15. I've lost track of time. But, I mean, I lived in that building. It was heartbreaking, me living. I know for you it was heartbreaking when I still lived there. You did come to my going away party, but and I didn't understand the severity of it. I mean, I did understand why you didn't want to come, but I didn't concretely get that till I was finally out. And actually, it was really the last 2 days that I was in, and I was by myself, and the place was, like, mostly empty. I realized this was, not that I was a part of the legacy of which you guys had, but tangentially I sort of was, and at least I knew I was had a bit of that knowledge. Once I was gone, besides the two butterballs downstairs, who are very sweet guys, just in case you're listening, it's a sweet nickname we had for you, or I did.
Ooh.
They're still there. They have to be, because the same posters they have, he who shall not be named took down he had his whole Republican version of no broken windows or whatever his philosophy was, and they took down all the window guards, and those two guys put up these posters to kind of assert authority over don't try to break into this door, it's not a basement. Those two posters they have are still there, and I don't think the landlord I don't think someone would move in and keep those posters. It was very specific, they're kind of pretend S&M. It was I'll actually, on my way back, I'll photograph them and send them to you. But
Great.
Forget exactly what they say, but it's definitely those two guys. And good for them.
Maybe they were Section 8.
Yeah, there gotta be something. I don't know. I had a medical issue, and and that was the reason I probably would have won in court. My heart condition, and also... I probably would have won had I fought, but again, it was time. I don't know. I was broken at that point. I was just over it. Also, he was really squeezing me on my ability to get new roommates in. That was because they had to sign his lease. I couldn't have subtenants anymore. So he had blah 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 blah. The details of getting bullied or evicted. So you got through that night, and you were jealous of the kitchen. I can see that. Miss P likes the kitchen.
But, on the other hand, it was no longer the place where all those things happened. It was another place, and it was colder, and there was literally zero funk left.
Yeah.
So...
Did you explain this to the kid? Were you trying to in the best way you could?
I was trying to explain what it was like, but they were looking at me rather blankly. Yeah. They're like, we like it.
I say that. We like it. It's charming for us, though, too.
Yes. Yeah. Well, as apartments go in San Francisco, it's pretty wonderful. I mean,
Fuck it. I'm surprised you didn't figure out a way to subdivide that, actually, into 2 apartments, but maybe he was going for the big money. Because that was a big space.
Yeah. At the time I visited there, their rent was $9,800 a month.
I was just about to ask you that question. Mm-hmm. And that seems reasonable for that space.
Yeah.
And when did you leave? What was it going on what were you paying when you left?
$3,000.
When you were leaving?
Yeah.
And that was driving us out too. I can't remember. Mine was I think ours was close to $2,200 or $2,300 by the time I was leaving. He figured out a way in the last few years to he was getting around the rent increase. Somehow it was going up more than it should have. It started quadrupling or something every year. I mean, the interest or whatever.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So that's another issue with concern to places like that. The rent control, a lot of that's been decimated. And so we were living through that time period where the Board of Supervisors, little did we know, there were a few of them working strategically to sort of undermine what was before, right? Or...
At the time, I wasn't paying that much attention to what was going on in city government because I was too busy, like running a business or going to graduate school. But after a year on the San Francisco Civil Grand Jury, I'm spending a lot of time paying attention to what what our guardians of the public trust are doing with it.
And how do you feel about it? Like, what's your read on it?
In all fairness, I think a lot of the people working for the city absolutely mean well, but they're greatly encumbered by a lot of things about how the city operates. Everything is immensely slow here.
Yeah.
I mean, it takes forever. It takes a year to hire somebody for a position. You have to run the request for applicants for 6 months, and then it takes 6 months to talk about which applicant they're going to hire. So, like everything is really slow, and that was fine when San Francisco was a little outpost, with cheap rents and not a whole lot going on except the arts and tourism, but
gold rush.
Well, yes,
always a gold rush.
Yeah,
this town will always have some sort of gold rush going on.
Yeah. So they really have to do something about speeding things up, and that's one of the things that we wrote about in one of the reports I worked on was the need to, it was a housing report actually, and we talked about how they absolutely have to speed up the process of permit applications.
Okay.
Anyway.
I've actually been listening to a lot of that debate, and there's, interesting points on both sides, and I do think, the bureaucracy here is a bit intense, but on the other hand, once you make a lot of those loopholes or speeding it up, there are going to be some nefarious people who are ready to pounce and maybe not take advantage of it in a positive way.
Absolutely, that's true. But it's in terms of housing. We were advocating for people to build more accessory dwelling units. Units in garages, backyard units. In-law apartments, yes, because they increase density without changing the landscape.
Yeah.
And I think, we all love the landscape of the city. And, things like Salesforce Tower just, sprout up and...
I've been walking this goddamn city. And I'm like, this is, I've left but never left. We know this, I constantly come back. But that building can be seen from there are places where, like, I could go and be super remote and completely eliminate the cityscape. And that building is the only one that, I feel like they sent people out to be like, okay, if you're here, can you see it? No, I can see it here. Wait, where are you at? Yeah. Seriously.
The irony is that, especially this summer has been consistently foggy.
This summer,
yeah.
I think there's a bunch of people right now getting a dose of, it's been unreasonably warm and hotter. The neighborhoods have been getting closer to, like, the Mission, generally across the city, for the last, 6 or 7 years, I would say, specifically, maybe 8 years. And it has been fun to be here watching people who are like, I've lived here, this isn't normal. And I'm like, actually,
it is.
This is the normal.
Yeah.
So maybe, but I don't know if it's going to drive them out. I don't think so.
Probably not.
An earthquake will. I don't believe that theory either.
Well, we did lose a lot of people after the 89 earthquake.
Yeah.
Including the people who lived underneath us at 1907. I think in your apartment.
Okay. They left because of that?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I should say I was in 1903, and I was going to mention when you said you walked the 44 steps, and I was going to say something like, and I could hear Jane's boots from step 22 to 38.
Yeah.
Yeah, actually, that's another thing. I lived under what was kind of like your storage. What would you call that room? When you first walked up the stairs, there was like
art studio.
That was the art studio. Yeah, there was a giant desk or table with a lot of people were using it as a studio.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, but anyway, just to get back to
Sorry.
Salesforce Tower.
Oh yeah.
All summer long, the elaborate glass enclosed peak of the building has been covered in fog fairly consistently, so it's shorter now.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh, I mean because it's sinking?
No, just because, the fog covers the top stories.
Oh, it's finally getting there. Yeah. I was looking. The fog was covering the entire city today, but there's also the smoke from the wildfires. It's very confusing right now. Mm-hmm. It's also really bizarre to have your house burned down by a wildfire, be accidentally in San Francisco, stay here, and then maybe 6 days later, I woke up at my ex's house and started walking from the Haight over through out to the ocean. That was the day that it was super orange.
Yeah.
Were you out?
Yeah.
Did you see that?
I did see that.
Ooh. And of course, the one day, the person who takes thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of photos, my camera was dead that day. And it was apocalyptic. Kind of beautiful, but frightening at the same time. Everything was orange.
Yeah.
It was bizarre. Salesforce Tower. I don't even know what it is. Yeah, I missed that whole point. That whole,
what Salesforce is?
What is it? Some sort of... Let's not promote them.
I don't know.
They're the new Cacophony Society, Salesforce?
The Cacophony Society, the spirit still lives.
Yeah.
We see occasional things, not like it once was, but, for example, during the Super Bowl, Mayor Lee put up all these tacky, I don't know what, statues, things in all the parks that, just had...
tacky statues?
Yeah, they were like, Super Bowl symbols. They were about 6-7 feet tall.
Made out of what?
Crap. Plastic.
Okay. I was not here, so...
Yeah. And it just said on the bottom, Super Bowl 2014, was it? 2015? I don't know.
You were asking the wrong question.
Yeah, well, I wasn't really paying attention to the Super Bowl at all, especially after they installed Super Bowl City at the end of Market Street and blocked traffic for a month. Completely blocked traffic all the
But
time.
God forbid the Occupy kids go down there. But if it's for the Super Bowl,
Right.
God bless America.
Right. So, he put up all these things in all the parks, and suddenly people were changing the lettering on the bottom of each one of these installations to say Superb Owl.
And that was Cacophony? Or at least in the spirit of it.
It was in the spirit of Cacophony. It may well have been some of our people, coming out of retirement. I don't know.
Well, why don't we explain to people what the Cacophony Society is?
Oh. The Cacophony Society was, in the words on their newsletter...
Is there still a newsletter that goes out?
No.
Okay.
No.
When was the last one published? Were you doing it? Oh, wait, I don't want to out you.
I think there was a Cacophony 2.0, a group of younger people who came in, and they kind of took over after more or less all of the Cacophony Society just sort of became Burning Man.
Yeah.
And I can't remember when they put their last newsletter out, but they put them online. They didn't do, they no longer did, Xeroxed newsletters on paper that they, put in to cafes and, bookstores and places where people would pick them up.
Was Laughing Squid part of that too, or am I wrong?
Laughing Squid, the people behind Laughing Squid were part of Cacophony.
That's what I thought. Okay.
And their online Laughing Squid page became kind of like the newsletter for Cacophony in some ways, just broadcasting all the interesting things that were going on around town, although no longer the same kinds of stuff that Cacophony did.
Yeah, that was like when everyone was going digital before phones.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
That was kind of the height of when I think Laughing Squid was at its peak a little bit after I got here. So.
And of course, back in those days, we were all just so thrilled about the World Wide Web. We thought it was going to bring together humanity, and it was just going to be wonderful.
Not bring Lord Orangebottom.
Right. Little did we imagine, we couldn't conceive of something like hacking.
Yeah. We were just out to share information and get people informed.
Connect with people all over the world. And of course, one of the things about 1907 was that the zine that I produced there, Prue said that, was the first magazine on the World Wide Web.
Really?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Are there still... Do you have archived copies of it? It must be on the Internet Archive or something, right?
It is.
Okay, good. Do you know the guys running Internet Archive?
Yes, they're absolutely wonderful people.
Yeah.
They did a great thing when they discovered that their employees were having trouble finding places to live in San Francisco.
Yeah.
They bought a building for their employees.
Oh, wow. Is it out in the Richmond, or is it...
Yes, it is. I don't know exactly where it is. Okay. I haven't been there.
Because I know the Internet Archive is let me guess here. I'm going to guess 15th and Clementish or something like that.
It's Clement and Park Presidio. Actually, the street.
Yeah, it is.
Park Presidio on the east side.
I have yet to go in, but my friend Laura was one of their first artists in residence. Yeah, so
it's beautiful. It's an old Christian Science church.
They're the best.
And they didn't change anything. They left all the seats in. They have an auditorium.
Yeah.
Where they do lots of presentations. And if you work at the Internet Archive for more than 3 years...
You can figure out some housing?
No, well, that's from day one. But if you work there for more than 3 years, they build a half-size statue of you. So when you walk into the auditorium part of the archive, there are hundreds of little statues of people.
Wait, and they're like half your actual body size?
Yeah.
So everyone is different? They all vary?
They all vary.
Oh, that's amazing. That I respect.
Yeah.
Especially as a tall person. I respect that immensely. I might have to go work for them. Look for a job. So wait, are those guys Cacophony Society-ish or no? Probably tangentially.
Well, there were these congruent worlds in San Francisco at the time of Cacophony. There were the artists.
Yeah.
Who did the kinds of things that Cacophony people love to go to. There were the cacophonists who liked to prank and do weird events. And And just as I was starting to say, the motto on their newsletter was, spirits united in pursuit of experiences beyond the mainstream.
Mm-hmm.
I can't remember the exact quote. I should know it by now, but anyway, so
you can go grab it if you need to.
There are the files.
Yeah, the files.
Yeah.
Files, loading files. What kind of computer do you have right now?
I have a 7-year-old Macintosh.
Oh, okay. What were you, when I met you, what were you working on? You had like a, you had
I probably had a 7-year-old Mac.
Oh, were you on a Mac still? I pictured you having like a big, oh yeah, no, you did have one of those R2-D2 iMacs, like those. Yes. Yeah. I remember that. Was it orange or was it purple? Oh my. Do you remember?
Gray. I think gray.
Gray. You're classy. You would have a gray. That makes sense. Space gray, as they call it now.
But I seem to always have a 7-year-old computer. It's,
That's the way it goes. What kind of phone are you rolling with these days?
Like a virtually obsolete iPhone.
So you stick with the Mac, though? You stick with... Is it just accidental?
Okay, this is my policy on the Mac.
Mm-hmm.
It's a good product.
Yeah.
They make good products. I don't particularly like their phones. And I would never buy a new Mac. I don't want to give Mac any more of my money.
Yeah.
They have too much money. I don't want to give Jeff Bezos another penny.
I literally bought the computer. Jeff Bezos. That's Amazon, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Don't you... When your house burns down and you have to replenish everything, suddenly... I've never bought things online like this before. But I was going to say, this computer, I promised myself I would not go back to a Mac.
Yeah.
But then anyways, I did. I bought this. I kid you fucking not. I bought this computer, and then it was then less than 12 hours when the announcement came that Apple became the first, whatever.
$1 trillion company.
I was going to say billion. I'm so behind. Yeah, $1 trillion company. And I was like, I pushed them over the edge. They make a solid product, but blah, blah, blah. Mm-hmm. They also aggravate me. They change softwares all the time, like as a film editor and stuff. I cannot even... Yes. Between Adobe and Macintosh, I want to murder people sometimes.
Mm-hmm. Although I must say that, I complained about this at a luncheon at the Internet Archive last year.
Speaking of the Internet Archive.
Yes. I said, this is ridiculous. They keep upgrading the software, and, it stops working with other software.
Yeah.
And why?
Well, here's the fucked up thing, and this is something I've been noticing since I went to school and doing, like, a little bit of animation and, like, essentially the video editing programs have not changed. They have not changed a bit. And luckily, we got over that Flash obsession for websites. Uh-huh. So Flash still is there, mm-hmm. but you no longer go to these websites. Like, it's a pre-programmed thing, or you can, like, enter the tools. It's no longer, programming the Flash into the actual, don't quote me on that. I don't know. But the thing is, it's no longer this big deal. Like, I use Flash as, like, a sketching pad now. But... why they still choose to... Like, I lost 10 years of work because Adobe and Mac, they acquired Final Cut Pro or something. I can't remember exactly what happened, but they refused to make a plugin so they made a new version, mm-hmm. and then I had 10 years of files. And, I was one of those people where, like, I was working on projects, and, yeah, I had rough cuts saved, but, like, if I opened the actual file... You could get a fake plugin that someone made, but it would only save like 33% of the file.
Yeah.
And I was about to go on a rampage. Mm-hmm. But yet, I'm an adult, so I don't do that anymore.
Someone could make, another $1 trillion inventing a kind of computer that runs on the same... software forever.
Some vintage programs.
Yeah, or that that you can send out that would agree with everybody's program on every new computer?
Why make it easy, though? They want to make money. That's the whole thing. It's about a new program. When I moved to Kansas, when I got bullied out, I specifically had one computer that I was keeping. I didn't hook it up to the internet. It had like 9 programs for this very reason. And that computer is the one that I swear to you, I gave it to UPS Ground. Like, they came to get it from the house.
Yeah.
That computer disappeared. And I fought with them for 3 years. And I was like, you don't understand. Like, I don't want you to just replace it. I need to replace these ancient programs. And they were like, this is never going to happen. So, whatever. Now everything's burned, so those were all fights for nothing. Speaking of fights for nothing, let's talk about real estate again. No, what are you optimistic about right now?
Well, now that was a very curious intro, because it brings up something that's happening at this very moment that is really interesting to me, and it has to do with the real estate industry. As you know, I started a nonprofit for artist housing in San Francisco.
What's it called?
Well, okay. I named it in 2015 Bohemia Redux, because I wanted to bring back the great bohemian city that, you know, charmed everybody by bringing in lots of artists, giving them, you know, cheap housing and shared access to tools and so on. So, you know, and it's very hard when you yourself, you know, try to survive in the world of the arts, or, you know, its corollaries like, you know, selling to, you know, magazines and that sort of thing.
Yeah. I'm just picturing the marketing campaign where they were like, well, we ran it through, and they were like, we like it, but it should just be called Redux.
Right, exactly. I gathered a group of people for the board. And a lot of them are very, you know, very strong, persuasive personalities.
Strong-willed?
But one of the most persuasive members of the board hated the name Bohemia Redux. And after years of, you know, fighting about this and the defection of our pro bono accountant, which, you know, just ruined everything, we're now trying to relaunch this.
Rebrand. Okay.
So
I fucking hate branding. I hate when people are like...
Me too.
You know, I mean, it's necessary evil, but just the terminology, it just makes me insane.
Well, you know, if a brand isn't a natural evolution of what you do, you know, like you have a definitive brand yourself.
Sure, take it.
Yeah, right. But, you know, to build one and create it and formulate it, there's no authenticity in it.
Yeah, it becomes a horrible commercial of an idea.
Yes, exactly. So, you know, we decided, okay, we have to start again. So we're going to refile under another name that my beloved board member finds attractive.
Okay.
So as we were going through...
Are we not going to say the name of...
Well, we don't know what it's going to be.
Oh, we don't know yet.
Exactly, no, because we have...
Because it's San Francisco and everything takes at least 6 months.
Exactly.
Okay.
So, at the last party I had here that you and a lot of friends attended, I met this man who came with a very remarkable friend, who I can tell you about also. But
Irremarkable?
A very remarkable.
Oh, remarkable, okay.
And this is a wonderful story of how I met her and what she did. But so she brings this guy, and it turns out he's in the real estate business.
Okay.
And he, in fact, works for the company that sold 1907, that sold our old building to
To that which shall not be named.
Yes. And so I met with him after the party and we talked about it. And I realized that people in the insurance, in the real estate business actually know who the people are who buy buildings and leave them empty for various purposes, mostly related to tax advantages of some kind or another.
Oh, there's an advantage to leaving a building empty, even though in a town where I thought there were laws like certain storefronts are not supposed to remain empty for like more than 8 months or something. I mean, we both know that's bullshit because we see that happen all the time. But
right, and more and more.
Yeah.
And the basic premise of the nonprofit idea that I am trying to put into place is that people buy buildings and leave them empty intentionally. Mm-hmm. And but they can get the same kinds of tax benefits if they just lease that empty building to a nonprofit for $1 a year.
Oh, they get the exact same. But then they have the problem of having tenants who are doing something to the building and might not be something they like or politically disagree with.
That is true.
Yeah.
That is true.
I'm a conservative if I haven't told you so.
I always figured that you were.
Yeah. Someone said something really mean to me the other day. They were like, Peter's way more conservative than I ever thought. And I was like, everyone thinks I'm a rabid liberal. And somewhere in between. But, yeah, no, I mean, if you can get responsible people in there and not doing damage and stuff, it's,
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
It's a complicated dance.
It is. But, I think a lot of people who are in that position of needing that kind of tax benefit also are coming to realize that they can also use that for social good. And to continue the premise of the nonprofit,
Okay.
we rent the building for a very nominal fee, with the understanding that at the end of 10 years, we buy the building for a prearranged price.
Okay.
So the owner knows that there's a profit, that there's eventually a profit, and in the meanwhile, there's, tax benefit.
Okay. Well, so then the person who's taking over the space is like also under a crunch to figure out in that 10 years how to pay to make it a profitable enterprise, for lack of a better word.
Right. But if you're paying $1 a year in rent and it's a nonprofit.
Yeah.
And you don't have a huge overpaid administrative staff.
That's a good runway to get something
Right.
going where you can at least get a loan at the end to pay for the...
Yeah, and I'm saying, we want, even if it isn't in the same building, we want residential spaces and commercial spaces. So, let's say you have a building and you put a little cafe, on the ground floor.
Let's just say put a little cafe. Just a little one.
This is something I have some experience with.
Yeah.
So, an average ordinary cafe takes in somewhere around $1,000 a day.
Mm-hmm. Really, an average one?
Yeah.
Okay.
And depending on what kind of place it is, your expenses, of course,
Location.
Yeah, and you're not making $360,000 and $365,000 in profits.
Yeah.
But you are making a profit. So I'm thinking, okay, you put cafes in buildings that are full of artists, and you have you have you run it like a co-op. You have, the tenants in the building, they have cheap rent, but they have to put in a few hours.
Do a shift, do some dishes.
Yeah, at the cafe, so that your expenses are lower, which means your cafe makes more money, and it also attracts all these people who have, from the beginning of time, just gravitated towards places where artists are.
Yeah.
I mean, look at what's happened in San Francisco. All the neighborhoods that people really want to live in are the places where the artists were.
Yeah. So they drive them out.
North Beach, the Mission, the Haight.
We were holdouts here.
So here, yeah, of course.
I preferred this neighborhood in the sense that it didn't have that, I didn't know the historical identity completely. I didn't know being close to this more, but I sort of liked the idea when I was living here that, I've always had my studio in my living space. I still am fascinated when people pay for outside studio space. That's coming from an echelon that I will never understand. I have to wake up and be able to paint and pass out in the same bed. But I also liked, what I loved about living in this neighborhood and painting is that there was no obligation to I liked the secrecy of it. Other than my neighbors and people, and then they do the open studio thing where they try to get people to, and that's its own thing. Those are great, but it's not. I don't know. I guess I'm outing myself as I like to be a secret painter. I don't really like.
Well.
But some people love it. They like to be out there. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'm not saying that people should be able to go go upstairs to people's residences, but to interact with people in the arts, to be around that creative verve is something that's very attractive.
Yeah.
So, I'm thinking whatever kinds of businesses we put into these buildings, ground floor businesses, will do very well and make it very easy for us to pay for a building in 10 years.
Would you be doing a specific outreach to get people who've left or or a new generation of folks? Yeah.
Some of both, but I think that every artist who got forced out of San Francisco against their will should be high up on the priority list.
Yeah.
Because it was just so disheartening for so many people to have lived and worked here and loved this place so much, and to suddenly be forced out. For example, I forget the name of this collective, but there was one big collective in the, I think it was somewhere in the Mission or South Market area, that had been there for 40 years. A lot of the same artists still work there.
Okay.
Lived and worked there.
Oh, well, there are several, but wait. Yeah, wait. Oh, I'm sorry. You finished. I was thinking. I know. I mean, there's a handful of them. I know. What was the one? They had the warehouse. They had apartments and studios inside, and a theater.
Oh, are you thinking of Project Artaud?
Oh, I was thinking Project Artaud. That's still there?
It's still there.
Oh, it's still there, but it's a different version of it, though, right?
Well, people bought units in Project Artaud.
That's true.
And one of the reasons why it's, perhaps in danger now is that a lot of the people who bought units in Project Artaud 40 years ago are getting old. So it's turning into a different place.
And they got in when the getting was good, and now they want to get paid. That's what I was hearing. And I'm sure, I know.
Possibly, I don't know.
Possibly.
Yeah.
I don't mean to make you undiplomatic in this situation. I'm just curious.
But this other place that I was thinking of was there for years and decades. It was there for decades. And so the landlord finally kicked them all out to move in a tech company that lasted a year.
Yeah.
And then went out of business.
That's a common story, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Are you focusing on... So you're focusing citywide with a lot of this stuff, right?
I think it should be citywide. I mean, the state of California is coming up with these things called art districts.
Yeah.
And that's a mistake. Art should be everywhere.
Well, yeah.
Not ghettoized into some little place that everybody goes to. Because there's so much dissatisfaction with the world, and so much unhappiness, and so much anxiety, and putting creative work in the midst of the people.
It should be everywhere.
It should be everywhere. Yeah.
It's sad when they. I mean, as a homosexual from Kansas, there's that whole thing of like, first there was more of like an 80s, 90s things, but like the gays move in and they like pretty it up, which was also, they bring their art and their art friends, and the artists come because they're like, oh, I need someone around who's creative. I see the real estate. I mean, real estate, they're on top of that to a certain degree, but then they create these commercial versions of that, and sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. I don't know. Like, I'm all for everyone trying to do something. I just don't like it when it's happening in Lawrence, Kansas right now. They're creating an art district, but they created these lofts. I mean, this is a college town, so it's it's really bizarre. But they're creating these like in the reasonable priced area on the other side of the tracks. They suddenly decided to like invigorate it by creating lofts and then creating these sort of like social art spaces. And the thing is, like, it sounds on paper, and as someone who's worked in Grant, it all sounds good, but then when you see the reality of it, you're like, no, this isn't actually. It's a very select group. Like, we want graffiti artists, but they want a very specific brand of graffiti. They're not. I don't think you can't force. I don't know. You can't force that sort of sense. Like, you can facilitate it. You can make it those things easier. I think the idea of doing the store spaces or like the storefronts is good. And this city has a long history of doing it in variations. But it did kind of disappear, like in the mid-aughts. Like suddenly there were a lot of opportunities to get like low rent for empty spaces. The thing that's truly amazing right now is how many places are empty. Like this, for such booming real estate, all the bodega, like all the corner stores are disappearing.
Well, like the death of retail is kind of happening pretty much everywhere because Americans are addicted to convenience and would rather buy everything online.
And if they're going to go out and buy, they want something crafty and special and unique when they go out. They can get anything they want on the internet.
Right.
So it's got to be, that economy is different too.
Yes. And of course here, commercial real estate has no rent control.
I just realized we're doing that thing, like when bankers get together, all they do is talk about art.
Yeah.
When artists get together, all they do is talk about money.
Yeah.
Well, cloud over our heads.
Yeah.
Well, okay. Real estate. I'm glad you're doing that. What are you doing personally? Like, are you writing a book right now? What's happening? Short stories?
I am writing. I'm actually juggling a few book projects right now.
Okay.
I've been working on a book of memoirs for a long time. And I keep changing how I'm going to tell the story of the remarkable series of adventures I've had in my lifetime. And so I go back to that only occasionally. At the moment, I'm writing a novel about the civil grand jury.
Okay.
Because it was such an experience.
And it's still fresh up there right now.
And it's still fresh. And
what's your schedule like for writing? Do you wake up and write in the morning? Oh no, I already know the answer to this.
I write at night.
Okay. About what time?
I actually try to put in a few hours during the day working on projects that will make me money. You know, like an article I can sell, or you know, some freelance gig that I got writing somebody else's business plan, or, you know, stuff like that. And then, you know, after dinner is when I actually sit down and start working on my own stuff.
That's hilarious, because I eat dinner and then I pass out. I only eat one meal a day.
Oh,
so.
Really? Maybe you should try eating two.
I've been on... I prescribe to the Henry Miller lifestyle, barring the anti-Semitism. And I feel really bad. Talking to Miss P, and not that you're named after Proust or whatnot, but you are a big Proust fan. We should talk about that. We should cover that. Yeah. What would you recommend that I start? When I oft ask you.
Yes.
How to start reading Proust? What is your recommendation for people? Like, do you have a list in order, or?
Well, you know, of course, I did it as a cacophony event where we invited people to join the Marcel Proust support group.
Okay.
Because we thought reading Proust required a support group. And
Madeline's.
Absinthe.
Oh, yes, that's right.
Yeah, so we came up with the plan to read 10 pages a day. It took 11 months to finish at 10 pages a day.
Okay. And you'd pick a new book each time?
Well, you know, it's a series of 7 different books.
Okay. That
make the entirety of In Search of Lost Time, or as it used to be called, Remembrance of Things Past. And we just started with the beginning and read straight through them. And of course, I mean...
So you can't just dip in. You gotta start. It's chronological and it's important, right?
You can dip in. You can read any one of them, because each one of them covers different aspects of life. Like the first book starts with the childhood of the narrator and goes to his adolescence. So a lot of that is about family dynamics and coming of age and, you know, many other aspects of being a young person. But at the same time, he's also commenting on everything going on in the world around him and what the adults are talking about. You know, each book is full of the world, everything that's going on in the world.
So I could pick up, there's like one about grieving, I'm assuming.
Yes. There's one about relationships.
Are you recommending that to me? Is that what you're...
Well, you know, I think of all the books of Proust, and I learned so much from reading Proust. It was just great. But that book taught me something so profound about having relationships that I never had a problematic one after that.
Whoa, what year was that? For the jury.
93.
Okay. And do we know, what's the name of that one?
The Captive.
The Captive. Sounds about right.
Mm-hmm. In this, and you know, it's really funny, although people rarely think of Proust as funny. But you're reading about, you know, how he pursues this relationship that's so meaningful to him, and how, you know, he comes upon these strategies of what he's going to do next and why it's going to be the perfect thing to do.
Existence de la resistance? Or no?
Yeah.
Okay.
And, you know, you're reading what he's saying about what he's going to do, and you're saying, oh my God, don't do that. That is the stupidest possible thing you could do, you know, in a relationship. But he does it, and of course things go badly.
Oh, that's the thrill, is as the reader going, no!
Right. So, I mean, you literally, examine all these behaviors that you've pulled yourself.
Yeah.
And possibly learned about, from your own bad experience.
One would think.
By the time you're finished reading about the narrator's, relationship strategy, you have a really good idea of what not to do.
So it's it's the same character as the narrator through all seven?
Yes.
7 books, okay.
Although there's one part that's about,
They take a season off and go to a different character?
Yeah. So
it's a bad Netflix reference.
But the most amazing thing is the last book, where the narrator is actually going through all the things of his life, commenting on, what happened. And he talks about how, he thought his relationship with this one character was, just the end of his life. It was just nothing.
Was a lover? Or?
Yeah, this woman that he was in love with. Of course, he was a gay man, and...
The character is?
No.
Oh, Proust.
Proust was gay. And so,
I didn't know that.
You didn't know that?
Listen, I'm a bad gay. I don't give blowjobs, and I didn't know Proust was gay. I just found out Oscar Wilde was dating some woman in San Francisco, but go on.
Oh.
Apparently it was a cover for him to get money, but go on. Sorry.
The majority of the human race is not either gay or straight.
Oh, yes. It's a spectrum, or circle, or satellite dish. What TV are you watching? Sorry, you don't watch TV, do you?
No.
I know. That's why I want to just get you on record for saying that. And that's a beautiful thing. I appreciate that.
I don't know how people have time.
Sometimes you just gotta watch Orange is the New Black.
I know I'm missing a lot of stuff that's really good. I mean, there have been times when I have loved watching TV, like I used to love the mystery series.
When I was in Hawaii and I was stuck with one channel, and the only thing I would wait for every Sunday night to watch Masterpiece Theater. This is a year ago. I lived for it.
I can imagine that. I can.
And that's the best way to watch TV, actually, I think, is to really get into a show and watch one episode a week and truly look forward to it.
Yes.
We're a little over inundated with really quality stuff, but I've been forcing myself to read. I'm not doing the best job, I'm going to admit to you, but when I have to write, I can't write unless I'm reading. I think that's a rule for most people, or it should be, because you just got to know how words work.
Yes, true. Reading is wonderful for writing.
And short stories a good short story makes you think that writing is simple, but short stories are the most complicated fucking thing in the world to write.
Absolutely.
So anyways, I've been defaulting to J.D. Salinger's 9 stories, and rereading them and realizing that my memories of these stories are completely inaccurate, to say the least. But his writing still stands. I love it.
Also, as we get older, we see other things in writing that we didn't see as a younger person.
I call this with adult eyes. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It's also just decisions in your life. You look back and you're like, oh, funny. That's what I did?
Yeah. Oh, so anyway, I just wanted to finish up the last thought about Proust.
You know I interrupt, so I'm sorry.
Which is when he's going back over, his life experience and remembering how devastated he was by the end of a relationship, and then realizing that after a certain amount of years, the pain just dissipates. Mm-hmm. And so it made me think about, my own history of relationships and how, the end of a relationship was just, like suicide material because, your life was just never going to be good again.
When you truly love someone.
Yeah.
And you separate, yeah.
Yeah. But in fact, you know, a certain number of years later, you're in another relationship which is as meaningful to you as that one was. And so I realized that when a relationship ends, it's a waste of time to be miserable.
Self-pity, self-wallowing, or...
It's just pointless to think that this is the end of your life and it's never going to get good again, because it will be.
Yeah.
I mean, although after a certain age, maybe there are no more relationships, I don't know. But, you know...
One never knows.
One never knows, and, if you could spend those years thinking about, what you could do to make life wonderful and not, how devastated you are by what happened.
Yeah, I can see that. I do with artists a lot. There's always like something wrong, or like why they can't make work, and I've always had this phrase of less talky, more doey. Just start making it again, or whatever. Yeah. I don't subscribe. I don't wallow too much. Like, even this wildfire, whatever. It's 3 days into it, I was just like, you gotta fucking move on. But then there's also a grieving process. Like, things do emotionally, stuff will hit you that you don't. Your subconscious is very powerful. Like, dreams do things. Like, that was, I think, when a trauma hits you, for me personally, those are the hard parts. It's the waking. Like, getting through the day is fine, but it's waking up to, like, a weird memory. Not sometimes the best way to start. You're wallowing in bed. You're just like, oh, here we go. That vintage jacket that burned. Yeah. I'm a fag. I'm sorry. I'm still thinking about all my vintage clothing. I'm sure you gave me some clothing that burned in that fire. I'm sure of it. I know. I had some. Actually, for a fact, I know that at one of your garage sales or various letting go of items, because you had years and years and years of your stuff and roommate stuff, and that's another thing about getting bullied out or evicted that people don't talk about, especially for folks who've been living in. I was in that space for almost 14 years. You were there, 25 years? No.
I was there 19 years and 11 months.
You're so much better on your times. Oh, then I'll reduce mine down to 12 and a half years. All right, that makes sense. But the stuff, and I'm not big on things. Yeah. But then when you're settled into a place and it's like your home, that shit's weird when you have to. Yeah. I had an Afghan that you gave me, or I purchased, or we bartered, or something. And I remember you told me it was meaningful to you. And I've had that goddamn Afghan. It's one of those things where I carried around. I was like, it reminded me of something my grandmother gave me that I didn't have. I got rid of in Kansas City. So I kept that. And I had just, the day before I flew out here, I was going through my boxes of blankets. Not to mention, my mom was a quilter, so I lost all those. Oh, wow. Yeah, we lost all those. And her paintings, too. But yeah, that quilt was it was an Afghan, right? It was you know what I'm talking about? It was multicolored. I made it myself. You did?
I did.
Oh, makes it even more painful.
Oh. Well, maybe I'll make you another one.
Don't do that. It's too much energy. Just buy it on Amazon.
I don't think so. In fact...
but its spirit is floating around southern Colorado, so who would have known?
Yeah. I just traded my Burning Man ticket. I actually gave it to someone. Yeah. And he offered to give me a book by every person in his camp. Yeah. And today he sent me an email that says, I'm gathering all the titles of what everybody wants to send you, and I'll put the order on Amazon. I said, don't put the order on Amazon.
Let me give you some local booksellers to go to.
I suggested Abe's books.
Where's Abe's at? I don't know Abe's.
It's online.
Oh, it's an online thing. It's an alternative to...
Yeah, I mean, they just sell books.
Yeah. Go to Green Apple. Come on.
Well, they're in New York.
Green Apple moved to New York?
No.
The person. Okay, I see.
So,
functionality.
Yeah, we could go to the Strand.
Do you go to the Strand? Yeah. Do you go to Green Apple often, or what bookstores are you going to?
I go to Green Apple a lot.
Okay, that's the closest to here. That's convenient, right?
Well, there's also Booksmith on Haight Street.
Oh, that's true.
That's also a good
They're sweet.
bookstore. But I love to buy books from Aardvark.
Aardvark, yeah?
Yeah, because, it's an old, funky story. I got almost every Dickens novel used there for a few bucks, which was great. I like supporting, stores that have been there forever.
Do you go to City Lights?
I go to City Lights every time I'm in North Beach.
Yeah, how often is that?
Well, I go more often now because I do walking tours.
In North Beach?
Of the literary history of North
Oh, you do?
Mm-hmm.
How does one get on one of those tours? Is it the website or?
I do them actually through 2 tour companies.
Okay.
Context Travel and If Only. And they're slightly different for each tour. I mean, like I'm in one tour, I talk about how the Italian community of North Beach really helped usher in the changes to the world by their embracing the beat poets.
Okay.
And the other, I just talk about the beats and the alternative culture of North Beach.
Yeah.
Because so many things started in North Beach, by the beat community. Like, for example, the very first theme restaurant in the world was in North Beach. I almost bought it in 1983.
What was it?
The Old Spaghetti Factory.
The Old Spaghetti. So this is that because there are spaghetti factories and all. Is that like a?
Right.
Okay.
Okay.
Give me the history. Break it down.
Okay.
And I'll tell you why I have a problem with the beats, but we're gonna get after that.
Okay. Well, an arty alternative beat businessman, Freddie Koo,
Yeah.
bought or rented an old spaghetti factory in North Beach where one of my old Italian uncles had been a spaghetti bender.
Okay.
In, the early 50s.
And we're talking about making dried pasta spaghetti?
Dried pasta, yeah. And he opened a restaurant there. And in those days, it was easy to open a restaurant in San Francisco. You didn't have the huge amount of...
Bureaucracy,
Yeah. And that place became, without a doubt, the single most trafficked place in San Francisco. They served 1,000 dinners a night. It was very cheap food. It was mostly like pasta.
I didn't understand the factory. Yes, so it makes sense now. It really was a factory. Okay.
It really was a factory. And
there would be no cheesecake factory without the spaghetti factory.
Right. And they, he didn't even take, in a spaghetti factory in the old days, they had these, I don't know what they do now, but they have these big hooks on the wall and, strings of rope going between them. And they'd take the cold pasta and they'd fling it over the ropes and it would dry.
Okay.
So, he left the hooks on the wall. And he filled the place with all the funky old furniture he could find, in, flea markets and garage sales and things like that. He bought the bar from an old ocean liner.
Okay. What year is he doing this?
1957.
Okay.
And in the front of the place, he had this little theater called the Frederick W. Koo Memorial Auditorium. It's this little It was probably maybe twice as big as this kitchen. But it's...
What's the square feet of this kitchen? What do you think?
Minus the counters?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe 200 square feet.
Okay. 300
square feet, maybe.
I'm terrible. I don't know what an acre is. I'm from Kansas. I can't farm. Go on.
So, in that little theater, it's where all these people started their careers. Why can't I think of her name? Hello, Dolly.
Hello, Dolly. Again.
Carol Channing.
Bad gay. Go on.
And let's see, Robin Williams.
Yes. I used to see him in the morning on my bike rides when I first moved here.
Really?
Different story.
Yeah. And let's see, a lot of the really dark comedians of the 50s, like Lenny Bruce. Yeah, they all started their careers in this place.
Okay.
The Kingston Trio.
Yes.
Yeah. So, I mean, it was like, and, he just brought in all these people that nobody ever heard of or that were just beginning their careers. And, there was constant influx of people into this place. Oh, and he bought every old chair he could find at garage sale and painted it some bright color, and he hung them all from the ceiling. And
an installation piece.
It kind of.
Did he write the right grant for that?
He just, let his imagination run wild, and he hung all this terrible art on the walls, but from every period.
You'd get in so much trouble hanging chairs from the ceiling right now unless they were properly installed. It's an earthquake zone.
I know.
Yeah. So he did that, and...
And then he also owned the old spaghetti the Subway Tivoli.
Oh, really?
Around the corner, and they shared one kitchen.
What is that now? What's the Tivoli?
It's still the Subway Tivoli, but it's hardly ever open.
Yeah, I feel like I've walked past it a couple times, but I don't... What corner is that?
It's, let's see. It's actually in the middle of the block on Grant.
Oh, yeah. There's like a coffee roastery right nearby, I think. That's my memory, I'm sorry.
Well.
Unfortunately, my time in North Beach is mostly me giving tour guides, not like you.
Yeah.
And going to SFAI and going to the Chinatown Library. So I spent most of my... occasionally harassing tourists in front of the Marilyn Monroe Joe DiMaggio Church or whatever it's called. What is that church?
St. Peter and Paul's.
St. Peter and Paul. Mm-hmm. Do you go to church?
No.
You sure? When was the last time you went to church?
I'm occasionally in churches for funerals.
Yes, as we do.
But there's an apocryphal story about...
Why you don't go to church?
Yes.
Well, then please tell it.
Okay,
do you need a joint first? I need some water. Can I get a... Oh, that's mine. Thank you.
So my father grew up in Messina, Sicily.
Yes.
It is like the... it's the home turf of the mafia. And like me, he was a very opinionated person. In fact, I managed to have a lot of the same opinions as my father.
It happens.
Mm-hmm. So he was 19 years old, and it was Christmas Eve, and he was at midnight mass.
As you do.
It was cold that night, and in Sicily, they sold seats in the church. It was like theater.
Oh, my Lord.
Yeah, so the poor elderly women who brought in the flowers every day and swept the aisles and kept the church...
They still got to pay? They still got to pay for a seat?
No, they couldn't pay. So they knelt on the stone-cold floor. And So, my father is fidgeting through the Mass, and finally he can't stand it anymore, and he gets to his feet and he yells at the priest, "You call yourself Christians? You let these pious old women kneel on the floor while you make money from us?"
Nice.
Well, that didn't go over very well. And shortly thereafter, my father was put on the boat to go to America.
Oh my.
He also did a couple of other things that got him into a lot of trouble. So
19, good for him.
Yeah. So and he had already graduated college at 19.
Mm-hmm.
So he came to America. He had an engineering degree. And he finally learned English, but his story is long. I won't go into it all. However, when
Save it for the memoir.
Yes. When he married my mother, I mean, she was Catholic. Her whole family was Catholic. She's also Sicilian.
Oh, of course.
So,
were they arranged, or families knew each other? How did they meet?
Well, when he first came to America, he came through Ellis Island.
Okay.
And he settled in Queens, New York, which was all Italian. And, like Italian was as commonly spoken on the streets as it was, as was English. In fact, probably more so in those days, because so many of the people there at that time were immigrants. And my grandfather, my mother's father, owned a saloon, and he hung out there. And he met all of my mother's siblings, her 5 sisters and her brother. And at first he wanted to...
Only 6? I'm surprised.
I know.
Irish Catholic here, sorry.
First he wanted to marry her older sister.
This is always the story.
But it didn't work out. And then he moved to California.
That was a succinct way of getting past that. It did not work out.
It did not. So on one trip back to New York, he went to the saloon, and there was my mother. And he said, "You haven't gotten married yet?" And she said, "No." So he started writing to her from California, and eventually she came out and married him here. So she knew that he was not happy about the church.
Yeah.
And so she, like a good Italian woman, did whatever her husband wanted her to do, and she never went to church. However, when I was born, and my parents were almost 40 when I was born.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and I was their only child.
Whoa, breaking all kinds of barriers.
Yeah, so my mother said, "Look, I know you don't want me to go to church. I know you don't approve of the church, but I would like to have my daughter baptized."
Confirmed? Did you get confirmed as well?
No.
Oh, wow, okay.
So he said, "Well, okay." So...
Dip her in the water.
I was a very placid baby. I didn't, I hardly ever cried.
We're opposites. I'm sure I cried the whole way. I'm sure I was crying in the womb.
But as we walked up, as my parents walked up to the church with me in tow, we entered the front door, and I started wailing. And they couldn't understand it because I never did that, But there I was, and I was just screaming my ass off. So my father held me in his arms, and he said, "Okay, look, you just have to do this, and I promise you, you will never have to come here again."
Whoa. So you didn't do Catholic, did you do Catholic school? No. Wow.
Nope.
I'm jealous.
Yeah, although...
What church was that? Do you remember?
It was the one on Van Ness. Why can't I think of the name of it?
On Van Ness.
Van Ness near
towards
Broadway.
Russia?
At the corner of Broadway, Van Ness and Broadway.
That's in Broadway. Oh. I know that church.
Yeah, you do.
I've never walked into it.
No.
But I walked past it every day for like 3 years. I have no idea. I have the horrible, especially the current light of what's been happening, I mean, for decades now, but I've been walking past the USF campus, and I don't think, like, I'm not giving it, like, a daily thought, or, I mean, it's not saturating I'm too busy with what's happening in the chaos of the world, but I have to walk this dog past the church, and I swear to you, I pick up the dog shit anywhere, but if the dog decides to relieve itself in front of the chapel, I'm having, like, and I know what I'm doing is, like, it's horrible for everything. Like, I know it's, like, the people who work. I know I'm not making an actual statement. I think I've even put a couple cigarette butts in I just can't. And I don't have a visceral hatred for the church. Like, I let it go. Mm-hmm. And I think, like, I respect it for, like, my best friend in high school used to say, like, when I was really coming out and just, like, hating the church, she was like, Peter, and she's totally non-church going, complete atheist from, like, the moment she exited her mother's womb. She basically said, but what would they be doing if they weren't going there? And that struck me as a Kansan, because some of the people I knew in the church their behavior was horrifying. And if they didn't have that buffer,
yeah.
And when I went back to this last trip,
yeah,
really sweet people. Some of them were truly out of their minds, and I realized on Sunday was the one day, like, it was a reset button for them.
Yeah.
And if they didn't have that, I wasn't sure where they'd go the rest of the week, honestly. So I don't. Yeah, whatever. Side note, but yeah, I don't hate the church. I just don't appreciate it. I want intellectually for people to move past this concept. You don't need the church to be a good person.
Absolutely, that's absolutely true. And you know, I try not to hate anything.
It's hard though these days, but go on.
Yeah. But for some people, religion serves a purpose that it does not serve for me. That doesn't mean I'm not a spiritual person. Yeah, well. I'm a metaphysical person. I believe a lot of things that, are congruent with religion. Like, for example, I think there's an afterlife.
Oh, you do?
I do.
Whoa. Please describe.
Well, I mean, when you think about, what Einstein said about how energy can neither be created nor destroyed. What happens? So what is the human spirit?
We're being recycled?
Yes.
Yeah.
I think so.
I don't disagree with that. Mm-hmm. But I have another theory, too.
Yeah.
Wait, so
No, let's hear your theory.
Well, my theory is it's just like, when you get to that state where you start to fall asleep, you have that kind of waking dream element. My theory is that when you start to pass, and I mean, this sucks. This is why I don't really, when people are in a lot of pain and they're like overdosed on drugs and sort of like put out to pasture. Mm-hmm. I'm all for that, in the sense of like not suffering. Yeah. But I think that your consciousness, I think that you go into a dream state, and I don't know why it would ever end. Like, that kernel of that, there's no reason that wouldn't end. So I do believe in a certain, like, if you believe in a personal hell, I do think you can create that. Like, I do think you have enough time afterwards. Like, but it's just your thoughts. Like, your thoughts don't end. I think what happens is the body dies and the thought continues. Like, I think that journey never ends.
Yeah.
Whether that manifests physically or I don't know that. I mean, none of us know any of it. But.
Well, one of my friends had a near-death experience several years ago, and he told me something. I mean, he's a sane person, He's not in any way mentally addled or anything. And he said, it was just like everybody who's had this experience says it's going to be. It's like you're going through this long, light-filled tunnel, and you come out at the other end, and everybody that you ever loved in your life is there waiting for you.
I feel like it could be the same. Yeah, the dream sequence. Why wouldn't? Yeah. Whether you're manifesting it or whether it's like, I'm not sure I believe it's those actual people.
Yeah.
You're there. I don't know. That's mine.
Yeah.
I mean, everyone says that. And the thing, too, is, though, that's near death. And who knows, maybe when the actual death happens, giant iron gate shuts.
Well, that's possible. We'll find out.
I feel like being named Peter, like I have a special pass when I get to the gate. I'm like, hey, Peter here. I should be like, I'm like a +1. My ego. But so no church for you. Awesome.
Yeah. But on the other hand, the sister that my father almost married...
Devout religious?
Well, you might say that. She was a metaphysician, and she went to every alternative kind of, religious experience you could possibly have. I mean, she tried them all.
They were available at the time. We've added some more since then.
Yes. And she, when I was a child, she took me to a lot of these places. And,
Bay Area stuff?
yeah. So.
Wait, did she move out here too? Mm-hmm. Of course.
Yes.
How was the tension between the sisters once the marriage happened? There was no? Okay.
No.
Only child, though. That's interesting.
Yeah, well, they were kind of old. I mean, back in those days, you couldn't have a baby when you were 48 years old.
So you were considered kind of like a prodigal child.
Right.
Yeah. That's a lot of pressure in a family, too.
Yes, and since my father was never going to have a son, he, molded me to, in his image.
How long did he live? When did he pass?
Let's see, he died in 1978.
Okay. How old were you then? You don't have to date yourself, I'm sorry.
I have to do the math. I was in my post-college years. Let's see.
Mid-20s?
Late 20s.
Okay.
So, yeah, he...
But the grandparents are all still back in Sicily, though.
By the time I was born...
Everyone came over?
My father's parents both died in Sicily.
Okay.
And my mother's father died in New York. But the only grandparent I ever knew was my mother's mother, who spoke only Sicilian, and I shared a bedroom with her for the first 17 years of my life.
Out here?
Yeah.
Oh, my.
So,
what did she do when she was out here? Was she just retired, or whatever? Well, she's retired. Was she just enjoying Ocean Beach, aka Siberia?
Actually, she never left the house.
She never did?
She was a recluse.
Okay. Did she have an active imagination, or how did she pass the time in the house?
She came to America when she was 16 years old.
Okay.
From Sicily, and she never learned to speak English. She was a recluse her entire life, even though she had 7 children. And as soon as the first child was old enough to go out of the house...
To get groceries and whatnot? Okay.
And she still lived very much like she lived in Sicily. For example, in Sicily, because the mafia runs everything.
Is that still today, you think?
Absolutely. And they...
I've heard the gay scene is amazing in Sicily. Go on.
I'm sure. Because it's so repressed. The culture is terrifically repressed.
And as a Kansan, I can't find anything hotter. Go on.
Yes, well. They invented something called omerta, the law of silence.
Oh, my.
So that you never out a mafia person.
Yeah.
And so my grandmother always used to say to me, don't tell anybody anything. Don't tell them what you have for dinner, because they'll be jealous. And
says the granddaughter on a radio show right now, but yes.
Yeah, and these symbols that I still wear around my neck every day of my life.
Okay.
You know, are the this is for protection.
Okay.
If you know, if somebody sends negative energy your way because they're jealous of you or because they don't like you for some reason, you make this symbol behind your back.
Which is very similar to the... Oh, no, it's not the rock and roll. It's what is it? Does it have another term, or is that just the...
It's the protection against the evil eye.
Okay. I'm doing it.
And
I'm not sending in negative energy, I swear, I promise.
And this one, let's see, this is prosperity.
Yeah.
These were pinned on my diapers.
Oh, and you've had those the whole time?
No, these are more recent versions of ones that were pinned on my diapers.
Got it.
But I grew up in a, you know, in fact, my family home, we might as well have been in Sicily at the turn of the 20th century.
That happens with a lot of immigrant families. But you were encouraged, like, what was the English? It was like, were you encouraged to be bilingual, or no? Or
no, in fact, I was, because the Italians got so much discrimination when they came to America.
Lest we forget.
Right. My parents only wanted me to speak English.
To pass.
They spoke Sicilian or Italian to their friends, but they only spoke English to me.
Okay, and so they were okay. Yeah, I find it's interesting how things have changed even just in the last 20 years. Like, I have family members who were sort of taught not to speak Spanish, even though they could have clearly learned it, and it was a thing.
Yeah.
To not be different.
Yeah.
Because their skin tone was already a little...
Right.
Sad. It's really sad. And I don't know, but yeah. World War II. Guess World War IV is about to start soon.
Yes.
Let's go to that. What do you think of what's happening currently? We don't have to go into the specifics of it. I mean, although we are recording this after, I would say, one of the most historic days in modern history with concern to airing out of the sickness. Do you have hope? How are you feeling? We live in the bubble here.
Yes. I have a great deal of hope. I think things are going to be nasty for a while as we rid ourselves of the menace in our political world. But I will tell you what I think has happened, and it's somehow just is the natural segue from my discussion about Sicilian culture. In January of 2017, I wrote an article which I could not publish anywhere, and I finally just put it up on Medium because I thought it was something that, you know, people should know. But the mainstream media did not want to know. And that is that what has happened in the current administration is that international organized crime has taken over American politics in a big way. And, you know, in January 2017, only using what was available online, I was able to trace a whole lot of connections between the mafia and particularly the Russian mafia and the current administration.
It's all been out. That's, I think, the amazing part of what's happened is it's all been so obvious. So clear. And that was a genius move. I mean, in terms of the manipulation that's happened, is that there was not hiding it became the ultimate shield, which is how could it be true if it's this clear?
Right.
Yeah.
That it's so
fascinating.
Yes, it is. And you know, like even I was able to you know, find some things like, for example, you know, there's a website where you can trace where all the politicians in America get their money.
Mm-hmm.
So you know,
so the
Paul Ryan and Mitch McConnell both get a major chunk of their money from a company called Blackstone, which, you know, if you trace the ownership of Blackstone, at one point, it's owned by the Russians. And we know about Russia. You know, it's credited by you know, career diplomats and scholars, is the first rogue state that's actually controlled by the mafia.
Yeah.
You know, and it's you know, they're very, very powerful and very dangerous, and it's why those people in Congress look so spineless, because, you know, like if they were ever to, if it were known that you know, the Russian mafia has compromat on them, you know, they'd certainly lose their jobs. But if they outed anybody for what they have done to this country and the world.
But I think there's been this slow gaslighting of well, there's a gaslighting of making people ignore the facts, and I hate all the terminology, and I especially the stuff that he inundates us with. That's now it's the conversation. What I don't like, the Republicans have been doing this for a good 35, 40 years of
Yes,
constantly redefining the conversation, and although I know for a fact they are the minority in this country, when you meet people, they've done a really good job of isolating people through tangential tactics, and we consistently, as liberals or whatever, progressives or whatever the fucking term is, in whatever it sticks, then they find a new way to make that sound evil, right. And they do it immediately. Mm-hmm. They start as soon as it sticks. Mm-hmm. They comb the media, this culture war. They watch more of the media than we do. They're obsessed with it, and this is fine. This is the fruition of. I do agree. This is a. I hesitate to like. The thing is, like, I hesitate to grab onto the mafia thing. That's so apparent and so true, and it's definitely happening. Mm-hmm. Because the thing is, a lot of people they have this idea of a more ideal version of this country that actually exists, and so they're like, "There's no way that's happening," and this is just who he is. This is just the way. No, I don't think so. Mm-mm. The P tape does exist.
I'm pretty sure.
Unfortunately, it's going to be in low res when we finally get a copy of it.
I'm not sure I'd want to watch it.
There's going to be a lot of like CNN like dissecting, like you can see the inflection of his nose, and they'll release a look. Mark my words, when the Russian government does release it, and they will at some point, it'll be a low res version.
I'm sure.
The high def is there, but yeah, I don't know. It's fascinating. I'm kind of curious to. This is happening worldwide, though, too. Like, the rise of the right and the... Again...
Well, you know, I mean, that's the thing about international organized crime. It's everywhere, and they are all working together.
This is the long game.
Yeah, I mean, you know, they grow the opium poppies here. Mm-hmm. But, you know, how do they get to the U.S.? How do they get to... you know, everywhere else in the world, you know,
in Afghanistan, we had a functional way to have Afghanistan grow the poppies through the U.S. military, and it would have been the only way to stop the conflict to a certain level where the locals felt in charge, and we purposefully neglected that to allow. This is getting all, but yeah, there's a reason. And it's also about the drug war. It's the I sound incoherent. We should smoke a joint, and then do you know, like, weed is legal, and we are recording this in California. I should state that.
Yes.
Let's talk about that. How do you think have changed since it's only been that just happened in January here, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, I mean,
medical was around for a while.
Yes, but basically there is no visible change.
Yeah.
Because there was always a ton of pot available in San Francisco. It was just
ubiquitous.
And so, all the fear mongering that there was going to be massive bad behavior in the streets. Oh, come on.
If anything, it calmed things down.
Absolutely, yeah. And it put things in a less hysterical perspective. It was just there.
When I go to Kansas, I would tell, especially potheads, and they're like, "How is it? How is California?" And I'm like, I don't even smoke that much weed. Generally, I really don't. But I was like, first of all, I didn't buy that much weed. Maybe it's because I'm an artist and it's always around, yada yada.
Yeah.
But what I always found fascinating is, and I was not kidding, I'm like, it's easier in California to knock on your neighbor's door. They could be a complete stranger and your new neighbor. You could knock on the door and ask for weed. Even if they didn't smoke weed, they'd probably still have weed there. And they would gladly give you weed more than they'd give you a cup of milk or something. That's the California I know. Because milk and sugar cost money.
Yeah, right.
The weed's just around.
Everywhere. It's everywhere. Yeah.
I don't...
California continues to, be reasonable about a lot of things, about the environment and about human rights and...
Reasonable. I'm with you, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, things are hardly perfect here.
Yeah.
But,
At least going in somewhat the right direction-ish.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, unfortunately, the rentier class...
The rentier?
Yes, they're out of control, But that's going to change, too.
There's a storm coming.
Yeah, and I think, that in that case, as in the case of many other things, that it's not by dramatic action, but by alternative action that things really change.
Yeah.
I personally think that the best thing we could possibly do is lots of public housing, like in Europe. Every European city has public housing at every level of income. Or nonprofit housing.
I don't quite know all the details in Europe. I often am slightly curious.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I thought I had Miss P. I purposely tried to bring a little can of weed for you, but I didn't. I'll bring it back later. Public housing doesn't have quite the stigma in Europe. I say that it's not completely true, but the suburbs are reversed, so you have that concept of the poor on the outskirts of the city, which in America generally was not the way post-World War II, but I do see that changing. That's definitely been happening, and the Bay Areas are really... I mean, New York, I don't know New York enough to know, the boroughs, it confuses me. I don't quite understand how the geography is working. It seems to me it's being pushed towards Pennsylvania or New Jersey and all that stuff, going towards the west. But here you can see that the city is concretely for the rich, and then the suburbs are becoming the class slowly drops off. Yeah. And, most major metro, a Midwestern town is just, we're going from the old heart of, the divided city, the wrong side of the tracks, if you will, or the river. It's fascinating.
Well, one thing that's happening here is that, the landlords just keep raising the rent, and now to rent office space in, one of those big downtown towers, it's $100 a square foot per month. And in late spring or early summer this year, a group of people in the tech industry got a bus and took a tour of different parts of the country where they could set up their headquarters, where things were a lot cheaper.
Yeah. So they have they have the farming factories for the information. So like, there are places where they're going to like because the storage facilities have to be properly maintained with temperature, and so they're finding places. I think it's happening in New York, like near Buffalo, maybe, where they got a lot of. They were working on green-friendly energy-saving techniques, and some of these small towns have like basically no electricity or water bills because they're near Niagara Falls, or they're near these places where they're generating the power. And then the tech companies are moving in because they're able to store all of these major computer appliances because it takes so much energy to keep it cool. Yeah.
Wow. Well,
Some Buffalo. I hear Buffalo's booming.
Well, you know, that's the thing about this town. It's boom and bust.
For sure.
And, you know, like, we've been in a big boom for a long time, and...
It's been exhausting, this boom.
Yeah, I know.
The food's been great.
The food has been great. But, you know, sooner or later, you know, it's just going to get too ridiculous, too expensive. It's going
Do you think? I don't know. I feel like this is Hong Kong now. This is like its own crazy entity. Oh, it's
I don't know. I mean, you know, like, people, I had this one young friend on the civil grand jury who was an engineer for Google, and, you know, making a lot of money at 23 years old. And I think it's tomorrow. He is moving to Colorado because he can't afford to buy a house here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, as someone who's been living in Colorado in their parents' basement until it burned up about a month ago, it's part of the podcast. I'm working through some issues. Not only recovering your life, recovering my life.
Yeah.
I'm sure you picked up on that.
Yes.
How are you feeling? You feel like this is going well? Do you want there are more topics? I need to urinate.
Oh, yes. I think it's a good time to stop.
Yeah. Stop. You done? Are you done?
I can go on talking until the wee hours.
You want to take a break and then see how you feel?
Let's take a break.
Let's take a break. All right, we'll take a break and we'll play this commercial from Montgomery Ward's Kansas City, 1989, specifically for wash machines. What is that about?
Birthday cake. Oh. Yeah. No.
We're recording a podcast.
Dope.
Although you happened to come in just when we took a tea break.
Good.
I was going to find your joint.
Are you in search?
I have one little bed left. It's really strong.
Okay, cool.
We can move into your room if you want to too. Hello, check. It's only been a year.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I'd lost track of him. Really. He's not on Facebook or anything, or if he is, I know we're not. You're gonna sit there.
Well, the thing about, listening to a podcast is that you can do other things at the same time.
Exactly. I have 3 of them that I listen to only to go to sleep to.
Oh,
And that's
really?
yes. Do you listen to Judge Hodgman? No. He just does these like friends or lovers do. They have an interpersonal problem, and they just want someone to be like, no, someone has to make a decision here. And so they come to him, and it's always something silly. But they're perfect. You're just like, and especially in this current climate, you need something innocuous.
This stuff is so strong that if I
weed?
smoke too much of it, I'll have to lay down.
Oh no, So is that what's in there?
This is...
I'm gonna take a light puff then, because I'm a lightweight these days.
Yeah, I think that's what's in here. 'Cause I don't think I have anything else. But it just wipes me out.
Because what? It's too strong?
Yeah, it's really strong. That's one of the things about the weed market here.
Yeah.
Is that, it has gotten intense.
The weeds change you, and...
Yeah. Although, I must say, the pot they were growing in Hawaii in the 1970s was absolutely every bit as good as anything you can buy now.
You think so? Mm-hmm. But they weren't, they were genetically... Were they, cross-pollinating the... I don't know anything about weed. But yeah, it's... I feel like what we used to call kind or whatever, now, the cheapest weed is, 3 times stronger or something. So I have to be really careful.
Yes. Well.
I say that, as I just say.
And maybe, my tolerance is reduced because I smoke so much less now. Ironically, now that it's legal.
Same here. Uh-oh. You know what that means?
Uh-oh.
I just got really high, probably. No, me too. I'm on the same path. And for me, it's psychological. I generally can't handle it the same way that I used to. It affects me more. I go into a place that I can't sometimes get out of. And I'm like, no!
I get great ideas, though. I mean, sometimes, I'm immobilized, but I get some great idea, and then by the time I manage to get myself over to my desk to write it down...
It's gone.
It's gone.
That's weird.
But I did get one the other day that I think I'm going to run with at this earliest possible opportunity.
Did you get it down?
Yeah.
That's the key. I don't know how many tapes from 1903 I have of me, my brilliant plans stoned out of my mind. When I was a filmmaker, especially. So wait, where's this bakery at?
I don't know.
Even better. But she works there.
She works at a restaurant.
Oh, and they deliver the cakes there. Yes, no?
I think this was somebody's birthday.
I see. Awesome. Classic San Francisco leftover. Bougie cake. That's pretty good. Yeah, so when are you still doing the Proust Wake? Do you do it every year?
I did it the year before last.
Okay.
I'll show you
so
pictures.
You didn't do it last year? Something happened?
I know I did it last year. No, I did it the year before last.
Mm.
So, you know.
My thing is I love cake. I'm not huge on icing, actually.
I used to have hundreds of friends who lived in San Francisco.
Yeah.
And now I don't. So when I did the first wake the last time, I made a tiny cake.
Oh, you...
18 inches long.
I was here for that, I think. Because you did... I was here when it was just... It was not the full cake, I remember.
Yeah.
You used to make the whole body.
Right. Like that.
Oh, my.
Yeah. Yeah.
I was here a couple years... I just happened to be in town. I feel like that's the funny thing about me being here, is that even though I'm not here, I'm still am here all the time. Like, it's... I'm sure
You're here all the time for us, too.
Do what?
You're here all the time for us, too.
It's bizarre. I'm like... Sometimes I really think I'm in two places at once. Well... That simply can't be true.
Well, what's that theory of physics that says that, you know, everything was always going on at the same time?
String theory?
Yeah.
Oh my god. I'm probably gonna have like a... Just to warn you, that's the most sugar I've had in probably... Besides alcohol. No, I don't really crave sweets because I generally like to sip. I nip on the on my whiskey like, a good 10 hours a day.
Really?
I mean nip. Like I've never been one. I say that as I'm scouring for my flask. Where is it? No, I don't. I've never really liked getting drunk. I do like alcohol. This has been a whole thing that I have to like come to terms with. I think I'm doing a decent job. But like as per, I don't like being inebriated. It's not a feeling that I like.
Me either. Because, you know, for one thing, I just throw up very quickly.
Yeah. You just drink red wine, don't you, generally? No.
You know, like, if I'm in a bar, I can have a martini.
Yeah, well, yeah. And you're set.
Or I can, you know, have a Campari and orange juice. I don't have two cocktails. If I have a glass of wine, it's like a small glass.
Yeah. Oh, okay. The wine's too much. A
Alcohol.
martini is usually pretty fucking strong,
I know.
especially out.
All
It's
alcohol.
really like 3 drinks.
I know.
One martini.
But all alcohol puts me to sleep, so there's, you know, and I, you know, don't really like to sleep until I'm tired.
Well, I'm with you. Yeah. Naps throw me off.
Yeah.
Naps. My cigarette's over here. What's the difference between these two?
These are organic.
Oh, I'm just getting the lights, right?
Yeah.
Oh.
These are light organics.
Well, this is officially my last pack of cigarettes, so...
Oh, really?
I've been saying that for a week. But it has to happen. I cannot go to Greece. These cost $4 there, or whatever.
Uh-oh.
Yeah. No, I had a bout of exhaustion my last trip.
Yeah?
And I'm pretty sure it was mostly due to cigarettes. So I never smoked before, and then I started chain smoking. Yeah.
No.
And I mean, we're talking exhaustion. And I did have to perform publicly at the height of this. Actually, that wasn't the height of it. It got worse afterwards.
Oh.
Yeah. No, blah, 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 blah. But yeah. Anyways, I have a heart condition. I should not be smoking.
Mm-hmm.
Can I borrow your lighter?
I'm enabling.
Oh, I'm an adult. I'm completely in control of my own stupidity.
I thought it was funny when you said at the party, did you notice I'm smoking? And I said, well, let me guess, you started in Europe. I started in Europe.
Technically in New York, but it was like a runway.
I actually started smoking when I met my family in Sicily.
Yeah? What age are you talking about?
I was in my late 20s.
Oh, so you went a bit. You got through
Yeah. And you know, like I met my family in Sicily, and, you know, all the family gathered, you know, all the generations.
You need a goddamn cigarette.
Well, you know, after dinner, everybody pulled out a pack. Everybody, the teenagers, the grandmothers, and everybody, you know, handed me the pack, you know. And I said...
And here's this bougie American who's not smoking.
I said, yeah, I don't really smoke. And they said, what do you mean you don't smoke?
In America, we don't smoke. It's the new smoking. We don't do it.
Oh, God.
No, in Kansas, my family pretty much was the only family that didn't have a gun, and we didn't smoke. I mean, I was surrounded by smokers and gun-toting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I can imagine that.
So yeah, I waited till 41 to start smoking, whatever. It has to end. I do feel it. That's the thing, too. It's like, because I'm old, it's like, viscerally, I've never done it before.
Yeah.
And that, like, I feel it. Like, every increment of it happening, and even the addiction part where I'm like, I know when the nicotine's got me, like... Just for instance, yesterday, they tasted horrible. The whole day. I didn't want... My body was like, no. And I still was like, you need a little bit. Just a little bit.
Wow.
And it broke out into like... I woke up in a small sweat this morning, and I know it was my body going, stop.
Oh.
But here we are.
Well... You know, if your body's telling you to stop, yeah.
No, I totally need to. It's hilarious.
Yeah. I mean, my father smoked 4 packs a day.
That makes me feel a lot better, actually.
He smoked 4 packs a day.
I'm doing like a third
He smoked
of a
them end to end.
Yeah. And just, it's a matter of the years of when they start adding the chemicals, though, too. Like, I feel better. I can see doing 4 packs of these, maybe. I mean, once you push, that's still pushing it. It's gotta be rough on the lungs.
Yeah.
What are you at? What do you think? I'm doing like, I think I'm at a half a pack a day at this point, actually.
I'm about 3/4. I smoke less than I used to.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, like I see the potential for the day eventually when I don't smoke anymore, or like my, you know, Sicilian relatives. I smoke 1 a day after dinner, because 1 a day after dinner is a drug.
That's the one I want. Mm-hmm. That's where I want to get.
Mm-hmm. So.
Because it is enjoyable. If you have 1 a day, it truly is utterly enjoyable.
Mm-hmm. Although, you know, it's really hard for writers not to smoke, because it just keeps, you know, triggering your neural synapses.
It's also a distraction and a timekeeper, too. So, like, I often find myself now, I've been drawing less since I started smoking.
Because your hand is busy.
Well, I use it as an excuse. Well, also because it's California, you have to go outside. So I can't be at my... It's one thing if I was, like... God knows if I was chain smoking and painting in my studio. Holy hell. Turpentine. That building would have blown up a long time ago when I was living there if I was smoking while I was painting. Mm-hmm. I huffed so much fucking turpentine.
Wow.
Well, I had an open oil painting studio in my room.
Yeah. You didn't use terpenol or whatever it's called?
I used the odorless stuff, but it still gets into you. It's a joke. I mean, you don't smell it. It's still getting into you.
Uh-huh.
And I have become more sane since I stopped. I mean, I still oil paint, but, like, where I've been doing it, it's like Fresh Mountain Air. It was a huge difference. Because I could tell, like, whatever, there's age. There's, like, self-martyr. But I'm pretty sure those chemicals are not the healthiest thing to have around. Actually, one of the first things I learned when I went to art school, one of the only things I learned in art school, actually, I've been decompressing the rest of it for a while, was the toxicity of the chemicals that we were using for shit. Like, we had to go through a 3-day workshop on, like, what turpentine does, like, the difference, like, what gloves actually keep it off of you, because I was using these really thin, I was at least using gloves. A lot of people don't do that, but I also feel horrible about those gloves. Like, they're so bad for the environment. All those latex gloves, I swear to God, can't take it. But yeah.
Wow.
No, turpentine, and like even the oil paint itself. The paint itself is actually getting it on your skin. You start absorbing it. It's not good.
Really? I know that some of the reds are really poisonous.
Specifically the reds, but no, there's a little bit of poison in all of it. It's beautiful. You have a Pokemon on your... There's a Pokemon.
Yes, there's 2 of them, actually. It's the same one.
Mm-hmm. Pikachu. It's the only one I know.
Yeah. During some of the last years at 1907, this woman lived underneath us with a little girl, a little 4-year-old girl, who was a Pikachu fan.
Underneath you?
Yeah.
You mean at Mary Ellen's?
No, the other... That would have been you.
Pikachu
Or maybe she was
fan.
on the first floor.
Had to have been. Unless Ashley was doing this.
Anyway.
Yeah. Someone had Pikachu dolls around.
Yeah, so the little girl gave me the little one. And then my ex-boyfriend gave me the bigger one, because I thought it was so cute.
It is adorable.
Yeah, it's not very dusty.
So you're enjoying this place, the new spot? You've been here quite a while now.
I've been here, it's almost 14 years.
Jesus.
Yeah. And, I've never really liked this apartment for a lot of reasons. For one thing, it was never painted before I moved in.
Yeah.
This place hasn't been painted in 20 years.
Uh-huh.
And this room where I smoke, is pretty horrible. Also, the living room's not big enough, and there's no dining room, there's no place for a big dinner party. And every time I throw a dinner party, I have to move the furniture out of the living room.
Yeah.
I threw away an almost brand new sofa a couple of months ago because I was about to do a dinner party, and I just couldn't cope with moving that damn sofa out of the living room anymore.
Someone take it away.
Yeah. The neighbors upstairs brought it down to the street for me, and it was gone before morning.
Oh, good. I missed that part of it. That's one of the things, like, walking the city, I can see the difference on what's available on the street.
Yeah.
And mind you, there's bed bugs, too, which now, like, I double think everything when I look at it, but our old block, just walking by for your party the other night, I saw, like, I had a starter kit for a room, and that part depressed me. It's like, even if I move back now, I could still find a starter kit.
Yeah. Yeah, just about.
It is what it is.
Mm-hmm. In fact, I saw something the other day I almost picked up, but another bookshelf.
Mm-hmm.
I need another bookshelf.
Always needed it. I mean, my thing was finding bookshelves to replace other bookshelves. You're always looking for the next one.
The bigger one, the nicer one.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I do miss that part about the city. But it is dying, because I do, even close friends, I see, like, they'll have stuff carted away, or not even Craigslist, just, like, have someone take it instead of putting it on the street. And I'm always like, dude, there's someone out there that wants this. Like, this isn't trash. But whatever, that's just my survival mentality. And also hoarding a bit. There's such good stuff on the street, though.
And also, you know, like, it's anti-consumerist mentality.
Totally. I'm not going to go buy... No. I would rather live on the floor, have nothing. I'm not going to go buy shit from...
Well, yeah.
Occasionally you have to break down, I know. Sometimes you got to go to Target.
Yeah, sometimes you do. But, you know, it just astonishes me, you know, what people do, you know, like, they have to buy a new set of towels every couple of years. Like, why? Why?
My mom, still, I love her to death, but in the house that burned down, one of the things that was fascinating, and I understand, like, why she was doing it, like, from, for her it was fancy to have a bathroom full of, like, towel racks with towels that you weren't allowed to use. That was her way of retiring and being like, we're gonna have a fancy bathroom. And I was like, I just need things to be functional. I don't understand. And then I got used to that, and my little nieces came to visit. They didn't understand. So I woke up one morning and I was like, they were drawing on a table, there were paint stains, markers had exploded all over these towels, and I was like, oh my god. And I told my mom, she was like, of course they thought they're towels, of course they can use them. And I was like, if anyone else had touched those, you would have killed them.
Yeah.
Good stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, they just collect dust when they sit in a room. That part I don't understand.
Don't understand it either.
Functionality.
And also, you know, like, beauty has nothing to do with newness.
So far from it. In my eyes.
Yeah. You know, I mean, I can understand why you'd want to get rid of a sofa that, you know, was so battered down that it, you know, had permanent divots in it. You know, okay.
Yeah, when it's super uncomfortable. Like, the spring is, like, literally in your spine.
Yeah. You know, that can...
But even then, that can be fixed. Just put some more pillows on top of it. Cushions.
Right.
But so, 14 years here, huh?
Yeah. You see that thing leaning against the wall behind the bookshelf there?
Yeah.
That was from the front gate of the old spaghetti factory in North Beach.
Oh, okay.
It was made up of scrap wood that had been painted all these bright colors, and somebody did a series of murals just on board.
Oh, the board, yeah.
And it got mounted in all these.
How long was it? Like
let's see.
Because that's like a 5-foot piece right there, I think. 4.5.
Yeah, there were 4 of them. I got 2 of them. And they were, like, you know, 2 on top and 2 on the bottom, and all the, you know, scrap wood thing around it. So I think it was about 9 or 10 feet wide. I don't know if you've ever been to this place in North Beach. It's on Green Street, and it goes, there's this long walkway that goes back to the garden and back, and there's all these little cottages in the back of, you know, offices, cottage offices. And then the front of the building is the restaurant, which was, I think was last called Bocce. It's empty now. I tried to buy it in 1983.
It's empty right now?
Mm-hmm.
Is it not a historical landmark or anyone?
It should be, because that place was really, you know, like, it was really a hot spot of the cultural life of San Francisco in the, I don't know, late 50s, 60s, early 70s. And then it just stopped being fashionable anymore.
Has North Beach, like, it's had ebbs and flows, like, when did all the, like, strip joints move in, or have they always been there?
The Condor opened in 1960.
Okay.
And that's because of the Beats.
Mm-hmm.
Because, post-war American culture was, the nuclear family, mom and apple pie and the flag. I mean, it was conservative.
Mm-hmm.
And the Beats said, stop, stop putting human sexuality in this little box. That's not what it is, and
separate beds, no less.
Yeah, right. And they,
God forbid the kids think the parents sleep together.
Right. And, the Beats were talking about how America was becoming corporatized.
Mm-hmm.
They railed against the corporate takeover of America, and nobody listened to them. And now we have the corporate takeover of America.
When I said earlier I have a thing at the Beats, my main issue is that I love Henry Miller and I love a lot of the 1930, Hemingway's a bad example, in the 40s, right, ish, mostly that's the height. But Miller, I feel like a lot of the Beat stuff, like when I read Henry Miller, not to like over emphasize it, but like he's the one who really spoke to me. When I was reading the Beats, like I appreciate all of it. I use On the Road all the time as a thing where a concept of a discussion, which is like your TV is a bad reference for you, but so I'll use On the Road.
Mm-hmm.
On the Road is a great book for certain people at a certain point in their life, and I'm glad it exists. But with adult eyes, I can't stand it.
Yeah.
And that goes with a lot of art. And I should be rereading a little bit more of Miller so I can do the same thing. But I just know that what I appreciate about him is that within his work he was constantly referencing other authors. So like he led me to so many other people. Mm-hmm. I feel like one of the things I didn't like about the Beats, generally speaking, is that, and I mean that's obviously a blanket statement, but there was a lot of self-aggrandizing. And whether that's in retrospect, but like when I read the work, the ego is there, and to me, there was a more, I feel like Miller and Eisner and even Gertrude Stein, there's this concept of more of a societal push. Like for the Beats, they were railing against society from a super ego standpoint, from their personal and I feel like there was still more of a communal, I don't know, I could totally be over-romanticizing it, but also I do, quite frankly, live a very Miller-esque lifestyle and have been doing for quite a while. So, yeah.
I love Henry Miller. Although, I mean, I take exception to some of his points of view.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
Because, he was really pretty sexist.
Oh, his misogyny was insane.
Yeah, but, just his freedom.
Well, his homophobia, let's be clear, I'm reading it, his homophobia was but he gets railed against for being supposedly anti-Semitic. When I read it, if you really read the text, the majority of his friends were Jewish, and he speaks about that, so when people start railing that he's, I don't know. I mean, yeah, he was very un-PC, I'm sure at that time there was like an audience that wanted to hear him be more biting, and he liked to give it to them and then take it back. So, but yeah, his misogyny is totally undeniable, and yeah, that is.
The one book of his I loved the most, it might be meaningful to you as you go to Greece, was The Colossus of Morosi.
That is one of the few I haven't read.
Wow.
Okay. On it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, like growing up in a Sicilian family and sharing a bedroom with my grandmother for the first 17 years of my life.
17? That's going
on. Yeah. Just those authors, who spoke about personal freedom and escape from convention and all those things. I mean, wow, they were so meaningful to me.
Yeah. I think they still are to a lot of people.
Yeah.
We live in confusing times. There seems to be an expansion of personal identity and freedom, and at the same time we're being suffocated.
Mm-hmm.
But I am hoping that this administration is the last guy. Like, I thought for the longest time, even after he won, I thought that there would be I was surprised at how many people felt empowered by it. I knew those people were there. I've never had, like, this blanket idea that we were living in this society's been racist and horrifying and homophobic and all these things forever. And it made sense that these people were feeling boxed in, and, why don't I have and as a tall white male, I've had moments, even just in the last few weeks here in the Bay Area, I've met a woman who wouldn't even, like, I just met her through a party of friends, and she wouldn't even talk to me, and I was like, I was just introducing myself, and at one point she just admitted, but was still not looking at me, said, I have no intention to speak to a male, and I literally,
oh my God.
Yeah, well, for me, I just was like, whoa. Mind you, this is like a birthday party, too, so I was just like, I still did a Bay Areas, and I was like, I understand the impetus of this, but it's still sexism. You don't know me, and I could be a horrible person, and quite frankly, I am, like, controversial, or whatever. I'm sure I will agitate you, but if we can't even get to that point, like, I don't know if you want to live in a vacuum-sealed world of, like, blankly staring in an opposite direction when a group of women are talking to a man and you just refuse to acknowledge the man. I was like, I gotta say that's fucked up.
Yes.
And I held my ground. And she tried to social shame me too. She tried to take a photo. Because I said I was like, this is I was like, I just gotta be honest, this is boring and it's sexist. So I'm gonna go back inside. So we were all smoking, and I went back inside. And apparently it looked like I stormed off. I didn't storm off. I just made it clear that I thought it was boring and I wasn't going to participate. Then she came inside the bar, and this was a tangential friend of a friend. Like, we weren't even really friends with the folks that were there. And she tried to take a picture of me that she was going to post on social media to shame me. And I'm not an idiot. I saw her doing it, so I put my middle finger across. I blocked my face, flipping her off, and she took the photo, and then I glared at her, like, I didn't give a fuck, like, I can take it, whatever, but she came across the room, and luckily there were other witnesses, and mostly women of color, so they could, like, I needed witnesses in the situation because I was explaining it, and everyone was like, this isn't happening, and I was like, yeah, it totally did, and two of the other women were like, yeah, it was nuts, but she came up and tried to explain that she was just taking a photo of the empty booze in the restaurant to prove to her friends that there was room for them to come if they wanted to show up, which was total bullshit. And then I was like, let me see the photo. And she was like, I'll erase it if you want. And I was like, no, I just want to see the photo you took. And she took a photo, or she pulled it out. And it was me perfectly centered in frame, and she was just like, whatever. She admitted at the end of the night. She was like, yeah, you're right, I was doing that. And I was like, I didn't do anything to you. I was just simply a man smoking a cigarette, talking to people that you walked up to. You're gonna social shame me because I called you out on sexism? Like, whatever. I know, and the thing is too, it's like, it's not my duty to be doing those types of things, but whatever. It's boring. I'm so bored. Like, that's the moments that he wins. Like, when he's dividing people. Like, that's an unnecessary divide. These are allies of people hanging out.
Absolutely.
We can say things we disagree with. I can be mildly sexist or, like, in my own homosexual way, arrogant, but let's talk about that. Let's not do a blanket statement. Like, whatever. It bored me.
Yeah.
Completely different. Alright, do you feel like you can do a part 2, or are we high and just over? I think, if nothing else, we have to tie it up.
Yeah. Let's. I could do part 2. I could talk until 4 in the morning.
Okay, it's 5:15. I gotta go walk a dog here in like an hour.
Do a few more minutes.
Few more minutes. Is there a topic we didn't get to you want to talk about?
Are we live?
We're live.
Okay. Well, yes, as a matter of fact, we were just having this conversation about, people behaving badly. Mm-hmm. And I've been thinking about this a lot lately. Why are people acting so crazy?
Yeah.
Well, I started thinking about the fact that our environment, every part of our environment is so poisoned. The air is full of toxins. The earth is full of Monsanto products.
Yep.
Billions of people take prescription drugs and then piss them into the water supply.
Or flush them down when they're bored with that and move on to a different drug, or... Yeah.
Right. Our food, all the food we eat, everything that you buy in a package is filled with chemicals. Mm-hmm. And so, we have, since when I was a kid, our environment has slowly grown more and more poisonous. Mm-hmm. And I think it's affecting how people think. I mean, for example, when I was a small child, no children in my school took psychiatric drugs. And now 1/5 of every school classroom is kids on drugs.
Yeah.
To modify their behavior. I mean, how much does that have to do with, the way parenting has changed, and how much of it has to do with the fact that we're poisoned?
Yeah.
What was I thinking about? All the plastic in the environment, the continent of plastic in the ocean that, that the fish eat in microscopic particles.
Yeah.
So, all the fish that we eat are part plastic. And, we eat them, but we don't process the plastic, so we're becoming part plastic.
I would up you on that. I think there was a study released this week, scientific study that said that microbead plastics are in our normal water supply now, and also beer, and probably most commercial beverages on some level they're getting in. So it's a good theory. I think we are toxic as a society, but...
And it depends on, how many precautions you take against that. You can live in a relatively clean rural environment, and you can, only drink spring water or filtered water, and you can only eat organically grown produce, so that sort of stuff, but still, it's all one big ecosystem, and too many parts of it have just been made unfriendly to human consumption.
I'm sure on some level, chemically, some of the stuff that's being given to us. I'm not a big subscriber of huge conspiracy theories.
Yeah.
But I am with you on thinking that, wasn't this part of the fluoride in the water? People were concerned. There's the chemtrails. It's not too far off to think that they're pumping the populace with something. It's not completely, that off base.
It's not.
No. I used to be more a firm believer in moderation and that, good people were in charge. But that theory, That's kind of getting blown out of the water.
Yes, well, that's what happens when the international organized crime takes over the political arena. I mean, why do we have an opioid crisis?
So many different reasons. Pharmaceutical companies wanting to make a profit.
Well, that's certainly true. But, where are they all coming from? Who's running them?
Where are these opioids coming from?
Yeah. I mean, are they all prescriptions? And who got those doctors to give out all those prescriptions?
Oh, well, there's a push to get people on all these drugs. Mm-hmm. I mean, I'm a firm believer in that some of these drugs are helping people and that, people need help to search it out. But it is true that they are, on many levels, it's just like any branding or a marketing campaign. They have made people think they need some things that they don't need. Yeah, I don't.
Also, I mean, it's one water supply. It's one water supply.
From God?
From the, whatever. From the whatever.
The rain?
And, it just keeps getting processed through all these various toxicities.
Yeah.
And filled with everything we piss out. So everybody, through the water supply is eventually taking every drug there is.
Yeah.
And I think it's making people crazy. Also the fact that, organically speaking, what you eat feeds the various systems in your body.
Yeah.
So, and every fruit and vegetable has different properties that do something good for the body. But so many people never eat fruits and vegetables.
They're also being fed from the water supply that's already tainted, too.
That's right,
So even
that's right.
when you're doing
Yeah. But, assuming,
It is amazing how many people, even in the Bay Area, I still know people who are, adamantly eat shitty food, or whatever.
Yeah.
That's a biased statement. Mm-hmm. But eat prepackaged or processed food, and and then they freak out if it's not, or the taste of it seems wrong. It is interesting.
Yeah. So, I mean, when you consider the fact that, what we eat gives us the vitamins and minerals needed to make our bodies function perfectly and our brains function perfectly. If people don't eat those things, the brains are not functioning perfectly.
And those bottled vitamins are not doing much for you. It just goes to,
No.
I agree.
So.
Well, we're going to make the world a better place somehow, some way.
Well, I think that's what's happening right now. I mean, I think that, and this is happening not just here, it's happening in other places as well, that people with a sense of justice and a love of humanity are moving towards getting these people out and putting in people who actually care about the people and the planet. So, you see these politicians, like that guy in Texas, Beto O'Rourke.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, just a new mentality. And, okay, a lot of politicians say the right thing before they get in office, and then they're corrupt as hell.
Yeah.
But I think we've had it with that. And
Yeah.
I think this administration, that shall not be named, is sort of like the pinnacle of corruption, and the mindset of politics. I think that we're just tired of those people. There will not be the kind of revolution that there was in France.
Or Libya.
Yes, we're not going to have that kind of revolution, but we're having it in other ways. Like, for example, on Twitter. Are you on Twitter?
I just killed my account 3 days ago.
Oh.
I'll join again, but under a fake name.
Yeah. I keep thinking of quitting. they have maintained an account for Alex Jones, who has really, created a lot of bad behavior with his, ranting about.
Well, he has the ear of the president.
Yes, and I think he mirrors the anger that so many people feel. So many unnourished brains, just angry because their life's not getting any better. In fact, it's getting worse.
Yeah.
And so, okay.
Or a perceived version of that, too. There's also that.
Right. So, like all these social media companies dropped Alex Jones, except for Twitter. And this one woman who runs this thing called Grab Your Wallet, it's just a movement to boycott things. So, in response to Alex Jones, what she did was she suggested that her followers block the 500 biggest advertisers on Twitter so that they would not have to see their ads. And that's, of course, what Twitter survives on, besides, no doubt, selling our information. But, but they need that advertising money. And if, a few 100,000 people say, we don't want to see your ads until you take Alex Jones off Twitter. So, okay, now Alex Jones got a suspension.
Yeah.
And, and the thing goes on of this woman saying, block those 500 top advertisers. So, I think economic boycotts are the way to go because the people at the top care about one thing, and that's money.
Yeah. But it's convincing enough people to do it, which is, out of laziness, or I shouldn't say laziness, out of convenience. A lot of people just don't get involved. Even after the Occupy movement, getting people to switch to a credit union as opposed to the major banks, which is actually more helpful for your local economy.
Right.
People still didn't do it in as large as numbers as I was thinking they would.
Well, in New York is talking about a civic bank, so San Francisco. And of course there's so much opposition from, the obvious opponents of the idea. But, I think it's just part of this move towards, a more egalitarian mentality. Anti-consumerist is slow-moving movement in America because we all love to consume.
I've been ahead of this for years. That's
yeah,
not
I know.
consuming.
I know. Me too.
Barring the whiskey, I do have to put.
Certainly we like to consume. We like, having good food and wonderful art and, great experiences, like going to Burning Man, But,
all things can be co-opted.
Yeah, and I think, just putting them in their place. Like, Charles Dickens came to America twice, and he wrote one novel that's set in America. I can't think of the name at the moment.
Damn it.
But in it, he talks about the fact that in the 1870s in America, he said everything is about money.
Yeah. We're a war machine. And we're about money.
So, maybe enough people are just sick of it. Maybe we're all, as much as we can, think with, with our environmental poisoning. But I think a lot of people are just ready for, things that make more sense. Single-payer health insurance and, cutting out that middleman who makes all the money.
The advertisers?
Well, it would be great to get rid of the advertisers. Because that's psychological conditioning.
Yes, 100%.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm hopeful I do think it's going to get a little bit more disturbing before it gets better. I don't think we've reached a breaking point.
Well, I think that what we're seeing, in Congress is the last grasping at the rewards of late-stage capitalism before it implodes. I mean, here in San Francisco, it's like, well, okay, late-stage capitalism made it possible for landlords to make a huge amount of money because of supply and demand, But it has gotten to the point where people are tired of spending all that money and are looking elsewhere.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you can push it to a certain point, and then you cannot push it any farther before people say, wait a minute, we don't need this.
Well, also, what are you getting for, you push it so far, even the people who have money to burn would question the lifestyle that they're encapsulating.
Mm-hmm.
And that's also part of America's, boomerang effect, which is always the suburbs versus the inner city. So I think there is a weird push right now for this. Remember the reverse white flight that happened, and as part of this whatever
right.
I call it gentrification, whatever. I was not shocked to realize that there's already now a rebound group of people I don't know why everyone. The city is beautiful and it's fun to visit, but I really want to live out and be more closer to nature, and that's the new push for suburbs for rich people. It's fascinating.
Oh, good.
Yeah, except now they're going to be displacing the people who got displaced going out there. It's just out of control. I love it, America. Love you. Let's see. I think I have to go walk a dog.
Well.
Speaking of gig economy.
Right. Well, it's always a delight to talk to you.
The pleasure was mine. And
maybe I'll come visit you in Greece.
You should totally come visit me in Greece. Wait till I get my island cottage. So let's talk of mid-October to November. I'll be working and running around until then. But yes, please come. Also, I'm sorry, did I cut you off?
No. I was just thinking of what could be happening by then.
Who knows? There's the midterm elections.
Yeah.
I gotta get my vote in when I go to Colorado. I was gonna say, if you could bear with me one more time and do the jingle for the show, that's the official way to say goodbye.
Okay.
So you'll just follow my lead?
Yes, I will.
Okay. Time Waster Radio. Radio for those who refuse to listen. All right, thank you, Miss P. Appreciate it.
Sweetie.
Yeah, of course. We'll do another one next time, Tom.
Great. I'll have lots more
and
stuff to tell you.
You'll have wine while I.
Okay.
Okay, we'll do a late night.
Oh yeah.